Chapter 11:19. In the Taurus Palace at the Taiyuan Ferry, a few immortal emperors led by the Eight Visions Emperor were describing Ning Fan's series of mistakes ever since he started to lead the army. The Eight Visions Emperor was one of the vice leaders of the World River meeting this time. He was a cautious person and belonged to the peacemaking faction. As a matter of fact, not all of the cultivators in the meeting advocated an all-out war with the alien races. Even though the cultivators came to the World River to protect the Eastern Heaven, they all had different opinions on how to defend the World River and to what extent it was appropriate to fight the alien races. Since ancient times, the attitude of the cultivators of the Four Heavens towards the alien races in the World River was filled with both hatred and respect. They hated them as if they were ghosts, but at the same time, they respected them as if they were gods. It was full of contradictions. 32 million years ago, the World River invaded the Eastern Heaven on a large scale. It could be said that it was the largest rebellion of the alien races in the history of the Eastern Heaven. In the history of the Eastern World River, there was only one major rebellion, but there were countless minor ones. Not to mention those minor rebellions, the matter of cultivators crossing the World River to the other heavenly realms was already a huge risk. According to the incomplete statistics of the Taurus Palace, in the past 100 million years, about 60% of the travelers were attacked by the alien races. The lucky ones could swallow their anger and give the alien races some benefits to make them retreat in satisfaction. The unlucky ones could not survive even if they were given money. If they could not defeat the enemy and escape with their lives, they could only be eaten by the alien races. More than 30% of the travelers would end up in the stomach of the attackers. Less than 70% of the travelers could successfully cross the river and reach the other heavenly realms in the end. Because of such a high mortality rate, the cultivators of the Four Heavens would not go to the other heavenly realms without an important reason. Even the ancient monsters would not cross the river too often when they were traveling. It showed how fearful they were of the alien races in the World River. Although it was not easy for the ancient monsters with extraordinary strength to meet with misfortune in the World River, everyone would be unlucky sometimes. What if this person happened to encounter a few immortal emperors of the alien races looking for food when he was halfway across the river? If they encountered such a situation, even the immortal emperors of the Four Heavens would not have full confidence to survive. Luck was also an important factor in whether the crossing of the river would succeed or not. Most of the cultivators would never cross the border river in their entire lives. They would be very satisfied if they could just stay in the heaven realm where they were born and raised. For such people, as long as the alien tribes in the realm river did not attack the heaven realm, they could attack the travelers however they wanted. They did not care about this matter. The ones who used the border river the most frequently were the superpowers of the Four Heavens. Among them, the Four Immortal sect was the one who used it the most. These superpowers didn't just operate in one domain, they also had to move around in other heavenly realms. This was especially true for the four great sects. They had the duty to supervise the four great heavenly realms, so it was inevitable that they would often send people to cross the river to the various great heavenly realms. For example, during the Sun Luo chaos in the Eastern Heaven a few years ago, the Four Seas sect dispatched a large number of people to the Eastern Heaven. Among them was Li Xiaoxiao, whom Ning Fan was familiar with. Many of these superpowers had made agreements with the outsider race. Every year, they would offer a large number of young boys and girls to the outsider race and pray for peace and quiet. This action was called the sacrifice of the river god by the people of the world. It was a foolish but helpless action. The young boys and girls who were used as sacrifices were indeed pitiful. However, compared to the benefits of those superpowers, the lives of a few sacrifices were insignificant. However, it did not mean that the outsider race would be grateful to you just because you were respectful and worshipped them as if they were gods. Even though the superpowers of the Four Heavens would offer a large number of young boys and girls every year, there were still a considerable number of greedy outsiders who kept attacking the travelers who passed by. Some people said that the outsider race was a group of ungrateful wolves. However, no one dared to provoke the evil wolves. When immortal sovereign Zido was still alive, these outsiders did not dare to act presumptuously. However, in the Vipralopa cultivation world, no one could do anything to these outsiders. There was not much meaning in recruiting them. Attacking them was also a futile act of courting death. In the long history of the Realm River, there were countless ancient monsters who went to the bottom of the Realm River in anger. Almost none of them could return alive. This was the general environment of the Realm River in the Four Heavens. It was precisely because of such a general environment that when Ning Fan fought with Long Qian on that day, he directly attacked him as soon as they met. Long Qian was surprised that there was still such a tough bone like Ning Fan in the Eastern Heaven. It turned out that not all of them were softies. In such a general environment, people's attitude towards the outsider race was inevitably distorted. Because of this, Ning Fan's carelessness caused 5 immortal emperors of the outsider race to come out of the water to seek revenge. This made some immortal emperors of the Eastern Heaven who were in awe of the outsider race feel uneasy. Is the outsider race so easy to provoke? If they were a soft persimmon, anyone would go and pinch them. However, the outsider race was not a soft persimmon. The immortal emperors of the Peace faction only wanted to protect the Realm River and the gateway to the Eastern Heaven. At the same time, they also wanted to recover the lost passes on the water. Even though the outsider race's evil intentions to attack the Eastern Heaven were obvious, these people still had a trace of hope. The original intention of the Peace faction to recover the lost passes was just to show the outsider race the powerful strength of the Realm River Alliance army. They wanted to make the outsider race feel fear and retreat. In the end, they wanted to make peace with the Eastern Heaven cultivators again. The situation had not developed to the worst point yet. The Peace faction did not really want to fight to the death with the outsider race. If Ning Fan's matter of capturing Long Xi alive did not anger the outsider race, it would undoubtedly be the best deterrent. It could make the outsider race realize the strength of the Alliance army. However, Ning Fan's actions suddenly attracted 5 immortal emperors of the outsider race. It was conceivable that the immortal emperors of the outsider race under the 11th River were already furious because of this. As a result, a good thing became a bad thing. These Peace faction turned their heads again and criticized Ning Fan. They also wanted to punish him a little to appease the anger of the outsider race. Killing the enemy in front of the formation was originally a merit. However, they were punished instead. This action seemed absurd. However, whether it was the history of cultivation or the history of mortals, there was no lack of such cases. The Peace faction did not have a personal grudge against Ning Fan. There was only one reason why they suddenly targeted Ning Fan. These people were too cowardly. Humph. Lord Alliance Leader is too protective of his own people. Just because you have some friendship with that Ning Fan, you sent 3 immortal emperors to save him. Aren't you a little too selfish? Punish him severely. He must be punished severely. This Ning Fan actually dared to start a war with the immortal emperors of the outsider race without any orders. He caused the outsider race to send 5 immortal emperors out of the water and ruined our great situation. If this young man is not punished, this old man will not accept it. This time, 5 immortal emperors of the outsider race came out of the water. What about the next time? If we allow Ning Fan to continue acting recklessly and cause an all-out war between the outsider race and our Eastern Heaven, who will bear the responsibility? The Alliance Leader? Or the Vice Alliance Leader? Or the main generals like you? There's no need to punish Ning Fan too severely. After all, this Ning Fan is not someone to be trifled with. This old man thinks that we don't have to be too harsh on fellow Taoist Ning in private. However, we have to do a good job on the surface. At most, we can just compensate fellow Taoist Ning. Not only must we show the outsider race our strength, but we must also show them our sincerity in seeking peace. Only then will there be a possibility of peace with the outsider race again, and the peace of the world river will be restored. The 8 Visions Emperor and the others spoke one after another. The more they spoke, the more excited they became. Among the cultivators present, there were not only immortal emperors but also some immortal venerables and immortal kings who stayed behind to guard the Taiyuan crossing. When they heard the words of the 8 Visions Emperor and the others, many of them secretly nodded in agreement. Of course, There were also some cultivators of the pro-war faction who reprimanded the Eight Visions Emperor and the others for their cowardice. The main general, Great Emperor Lai Jun, was one of them. He had a close relative who died in the hands of the World River. He could not wait to start an all-out war with the outsider race. When he heard that Ning Fan had captured Long Xian alive, he was the happiest one among the emperors. Naturally, he supported Ning Fan with all his might. Similarly, Emperor Cong, Emperor Jin Heng, Emperor Niu Heng and a few others also supported Ning Fan. Among them, as the alliance leader, Emperor Cong had to consider the reputation of the pro-war faction and the pro-peace faction. There were many things that he could not say directly. Thus, he could only hint Lai Jun and the others to say it. Cowards! A bunch of cowards! Even a fool can see that the outsider race wants to fall into the Eastern Heaven's hands again. You actually still want to ask for peace with the outsider race. You really don't know life from death. Brother Ning can capture the enemy's immortal emperor with his immortal venerable realm cultivation base. Which one of you can do that? Such a great contribution was actually said to be a sinner who doesn't care about the overall situation. Don't you have any shame? Emperor Niu Heng scolded. Ning Fan was his sworn brother. Naturally, he did not like others to criticize Ning Fan. Once he started scolding him, he really did not recognize anyone. Many of the cultivators of the Eastern Heaven who used to call him brothers in the past were scolded by him until their faces turned red. There are 10,000 laws in the world. All are rewards and punishments. The matter of the alliance meeting also needs to be clear about rewards and punishments. Meritorious deeds are meritorious deeds. How can it be said to be wrong? As for appeasing the outsider race's anger by punishing fellow Taoist Ning, you actually can think of such a stupid thing. Isn't it like cutting one's own flesh to feed the wolf? If the wolf doesn't retreat, it will first destroy your Great Wall. Emperor Lai Jun sneered. Is the overall situation more important or personal honor and disgrace? As long as the Eastern Heaven is peaceful, who can't make a little sacrifice? So what if it's Ning Fan? Is he superior to others? It's not like we want him to die. We just want him to be slightly punished and bow his head to the outsider race. Is it that difficult? Dongling Immortal Wang, who was in favor of peace, retorted with a red face. Then why don't fellow Taoist Dongling sacrifice himself first? Emperor Jin Heng said in a deep voice. Seeing both sides arguing more and more fiercely, Emperor Cong finally came out and stopped everyone's quarrel. Then, he closed the coffin and concluded that Ning Fan was meritorious and not guilty. He should be rewarded and not punished. As soon as these words came out, the people in favor of war were naturally happy. However, the people in favor of peace had an ugly expression. They secretly thought that Emperor Cong was biased. First, he sent people to save Ning Fan. Then, he used all his strength to cover for Ning Fan, who didn't know that Emperor Cong and his master, Taoist Mu Song, had a good relationship with Ning Fan. Hearing that Ning Fan was not guilty, Emperor Yuan Dan smiled, but his heart was slightly regretful. He had been hiding his hostility towards Ning Fan since the beginning. He did not want anyone to know about it. Seeing that Ning Fan would not be punished, Emperor Yuan Dan suddenly said indifferently, "Merits and demerits are secondary. This old man thinks that we should be more concerned about the safety of fellow Taoist Ning and the others. Even though the Alliance Master has sent the Thunder Immortal Tao Companion and fellow Taoist Ji Zhuang to save fellow Taoist Ning, no one can be sure if they can really save fellow Taoist Ning with just 3/6 Tribulation Immortal Emperors. You should know that the enemy is 5 Immortal Emperors of the outsider race. It's not easy to escape from the pursuit of 5 immortal emperors of the outsider race back to Taiyuan Crossing. We don't know if they can return safely. It's really worrying." As soon as these words came out, the people in favor of war frowned. On the contrary, the people in favor of peace's expression eased a lot. Because of Emperor Yuan Dan's words, the people in favor of war began to worry about the safety of Ning Fan's group. They were worried that they would suffer heavy losses in the pursuit of the 5 immortal emperors of the outsider race. On the other hand, the people in favor of peace wished that more of Ning Fan's group would die so that they could appease the anger of the outsider race. If possible, it would be better if Ning Fan, the culprit, died. It would be easier for them to negotiate with the outsider race in the future. Fellow Taoist Yuan Dan, you worry too much. Even though the enemy is strong, we aren't that much weaker. Needless to say about fellow Taoist Ning's strength, the Alliance Master has also sent 3 immortal emperors to help fellow Taoist Ning's group retreat. Even if they are pursued by 5 immortal emperors of the outsider race, they won't suffer heavy losses, right? Emperor Jin Heng pondered for a moment and said, Fellow Taoist Jin Heng, you're wrong. Since the immortal emperors of the outsider race dared to come out of the water to seek revenge, how could they not be fully prepared? I reckon that among the 5 immortal emperors of the outsider race, at least one of them is a 7th tribulation immortal emperor. Moreover, they must have taken some precautions against fellow Taoist Ning's techniques. Among those of the same level, the immortal emperors of the outsider race are stronger than the immortal emperors of the eastern heaven. Today, the enemy has the advantage in terms of numbers and cultivation base. Moreover, they have the geographical advantage of the world river. They must have taken precautions against fellow Taoist Ning's techniques in advance. I reckon that even if fellow Taoist Ning's group succeeds in retreating to the Taiyuan crossing, they will certainly suffer heavy losses. There might even be fellow immortal emperors who will die because of this. I, Yuan Dan, am neither in favor of war nor peace. However, I have no choice but to say something fair here. The Alliance Master really shouldn't push the other immortal emperors into the pit of fire for his own selfish reasons and risk their lives with fellow Taoist Ning. The meaning of his words was as clear as day. Today, in order to make up for Ning Fan's mistake, Songdi could send his Thunder Immortal Tao companion and Great Emperor Ji Zhao to their deaths. Next time, Songdi could also send other people to their deaths. Anyone could be sacrificed by Songdi. Yuan Dan Great Emperor's words were like a needle hidden in silk floss. As soon as he said that, the expressions of most of the immortal emperors changed. Even a few of the immortal emperors who were in favor of war were moved. I, Songdi, am doing this for the sake of the overall situation. I have absolutely no selfish motives. If there are really fellow immortal emperors who die because of fellow Taoist Ning, I, Songdi, will bear all the responsibility. Songdi suddenly stood up and said with a serious expression, Alliance Master's words are nice to hear. Why don't I see you personally going to the 11th path to save that Ning Fan? Someone said sarcastically. However, after Songdi glared at him, he was so shocked that he shut his mouth. Even though he shut his mouth, his heart was still unconvinced. What everyone thought in their hearts was not something that Songdi could decide. Seeing that his casual provocation made the hearts of the higher-ups of the alliance have different opinions, Yuan Dan Great Emperor's face did not show it. However, he was quite proud of himself in his heart. He secretly ridiculed the so-called Realm River Alliance as just a bunch of motley crew. He was also secretly speculating in his heart. If he really disbanded the Realm River Alliance with just a few words, and the alien race fell into the eastern sky again, would he be able to use this to ask for some credit from the people behind the alien race? The combined forces of the army were not united. They were hesitant to move forward. Snobbery made people fight and even kill each other. Interesting. Interesting. What a pity. What a pity. The Thunder Immortal Tao companion and fellow Taoist Ji Zhuang are all people who have a strong sense of brotherhood. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone to save Ning Fan despite knowing that the 11th path was dangerous. However, the alien races are too strong. There are 5 immortal emperors. I'm afraid that fellow Taoist Lei Xian and the others are doomed. Yuan Dan Great Emperor's face was filled with pity. He sighed again and again. Every sentence he said made the hearts of the people fall apart. The morale that was boosted by Ning Fan's capture of the alien race's immortal emperors was about to be destroyed by a few words from the Yuan Dan Great Emperor and the peacemaking faction. Songdi was greatly disappointed. Suddenly, an urgent report was sent back from the 11th path. Everyone's heart tightened. How could Ning Fan and the others be defeated by the 5 immortal emperors so quickly? Otherwise, why would the report be sent back? How many days have passed? The bad news has actually been sent back. The alien races are actually so terrifying. When the report was sent to Songdi, it had not been opened yet. Songdi's heart was extremely heavy. Even though he knew that Ning Fan's strength was astonishing, he had not seen it with his own eyes. It was just hearsay. Perhaps, the news of fellow Taoist Lei Xian and the others' deaths would be sent back in this report, or perhaps, the news of Ning Fan's death would be sent back. Songdi's heart became heavier and heavier. He flipped through the report. However, after just a glance, his complicated expression disappeared. His handsome face was filled with astonishment. There was not much joy on his face. It was because the content of the report had exceeded his imagination. It made him subconsciously doubt the authenticity of the report. Capturing 5 immortal emperors alive. Among them, there are even 2 7th tribulation immortals. How is this possible? Ning Fan is not a god. He is an immortal venerable and not a quasi-saint. How is it possible for him to do such a thing? Could it be that this report was fabricated by the alien races? Sigh. Has the news of the defeat at the front line been sent back? Since the Alliance Master is so shocked, it seems to be a rather serious piece of bad news. It's most likely that some immortal emperors have fallen. I wonder which fellow Taoist has followed in fellow Taoist Han Yun's footsteps. It really hurts my heart. The alien races deserve to be killed. They really deserve to be killed. The Primal Core Great Emperor pretended to be sad and angry. However, he could not wait for the alien races to kill more immortal emperors of the Eastern Heaven. He kept saying that the alien races deserved to be killed, but his words were destroying the morale of the cultivators at the scene. More fellow Taoist immortal emperors have been killed. A few of them have fallen. Why didn't the Alliance Master say anything? Could it be that he doesn't dare to bear this mistake? Someone said angrily. His anger could not hide his fear towards the alien races. This old man said that this Ning Fan kid is a troublemaker. So what? This old man was right. This kind of person should be severely punished. The immortal emperor of the Peace Sect was furious on the surface, but he was secretly happy in his heart. He thought that since the immortal emperor of his side had died, and the captured Long Ji's true spirit had most likely been rescued by the foreign race, the hatred of the foreign race towards the eastern sky should be reduced a little. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Songdi, waiting for his answer. Songdi regained his senses from his daze and felt deeply ashamed. He looked like a young man, but he was not a real one. In any case, he was a figure who had lived for tens of millions of years. He was actually stunned by a piece of information. He really lost his composure. The information was not fake. After all, there was a recording of Ning Fan defeating the Dragon Horse 5 emperors at the end of the report. It was truly a hearty victory. Ha! Songdi no longer concealed his surprise and laughed loudly. Everyone was confused by Songdi's laughter. Could it be that the Alliance Master has lost his mind because of the great defeat at the front line? Someone secretly doubted. Yuan Dan Emperor's heart sank. He had a bad feeling. May I ask the Alliance Master how many casualties there are in the 11th front line? Yuan Dan Emperor asked carefully. Casualties? Haha, there are injuries but no deaths. Barely satisfactory, barely satisfactory. Taoist Ning and the others did not retreat from Guangzhong Pass. Instead, they fought against the 5 alien immortal emperors in front of the pass. With the efforts of Taoist Ning, Taoist Lei Xian and the others, they actually captured all 5 alien immortal emperors alive. None of them escaped. Among them were 2 7th tribulation immortal emperors. What do you think? After this great victory, no one will say anything bad about Taoist Ning anymore, right? If even capturing 6 immortal emperors is a crime, no one in this world will dare to claim the credit. What? 5 alien immortal emperors were captured again. There were even 2 7th tribulation immortal emperors among them. Everyone's expression changed abruptly. Even Ba Jing, Su Kong, Shen Kong, Tai Li and the other 8th tribulation immortal emperors could not sit still. They suddenly stood up, their faces were trembling with excitement. Even old Devil Bai, who was sleeping soundly on the tea table, suddenly woke up. He slapped the table and stood up, snatching the report from Emperor Tsong's hand. He looked at the report in the jade slip in shock, dumbfounded. Capturing alive was much more difficult than killing. Ning Fan and the others actually captured 5 alien immortal emperors, including 2 seventh tribulation immortal emperors. Even the arrogant old devil did not think that he could do such a shocking thing. But Ning Fan and the others actually did it. There were only a few of them, 1 immortal venerable and 3 sixth tribulation immortal emperors. Could it be a fake report? The report is true. Songdi's words shattered everyone's fantasy. He smiled faintly and took back the report from old Devil Bai's hand. The report is true. It's absolutely true. Ning Fan and the others actually achieved an unprecedented victory with just 1 venerable 3 tribulation immortal emperors. This is really amazing. Everyone was shocked by the content of the report. Other than the people who supported peace, everyone was pleasantly surprised. Their morale was greatly boosted. They even felt like they were in a dream. Impossible. The Thunder Immortal Dao couple is strong, but it's impossible for them to capture 5 alien immortal emperors with just 1 venerable 3 tribulation immortal emperors. It's impossible for them to even defeat them. It's even difficult for them to protect themselves. The Thunder Immortal Dao couple doesn't have this ability at all. How can we prove that the report is true based on the Alliance Master's words? This report must be fabricated by the Alliance Master. He probably wants to use it to stabilize the morale of the army. Some of the people who supported peace still did not believe it and voiced their doubts. Songdi's eyes turned cold. He glanced at that person and said in a deep voice, "Don't talk nonsense without evidence. Otherwise, you will have to bear the consequences. If you don't believe it, you can see it for yourself." Songdi made a series of hand seals towards the jade slip. All of a sudden, countless fragments of light flew out from the jade slip, turning into scenes of battle that appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Without a doubt, these battle scenes could prove the authenticity of the report. However, these battle scenes were too shocking. As soon as they were played, the entire hall of the Taurus Palace fell into silence. It was so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. There was no other reason. Not to mention those who did not believe the authenticity of the report. Even those who believed it also thought that this unprecedented victory was led by the Thunder Immortal Dao couple who had the strongest strength. At the very least, they thought that the 3 venerable 3 tribulation Immortal Dao couple had made contributions in exchange for this great victory. However, the truth of the matter made everyone's mouth drop. Yes, Thunder Immortal True Monarch and the other 2 immortal emperors did contribute in this battle. However, they did not obtain any results. From the beginning to the end, they only played a slight role in delaying the enemy. They helped Ning Fan share part of the enemy's combat power, giving him the opportunity to defeat the enemy. From the battle scenes, even someone as strong as Thunder Immortal True Monarch was suppressed by the enemy immortal emperors from the beginning to the end. As for Machina and the others, they were in an even more difficult situation. The 3 immortal emperors of the Eastern Heaven were beaten by the immortal emperors of the foreign races to the point where they could not fight back at all. On the contrary, Ning Fan, who was just a mere immortal venerable, easily crushed all the enemy immortal emperors. No one could stop him. In the battle scenes, there were the 2 steels of sun, moon and stars which were comparable to mid-grade innate magic treasures. There was the cross-shaped halo which could instantly kill an immortal emperor. There was the primordial true body which could remain unscathed under the tide-like attacks of the 7 tribulation immortal emperors. The strength that Ning Fan displayed made the scalps of all the immortal emperors on the scene numb. Even old Devil Bai, who was at the 9th tribulation immortal Dao realm, was shocked by the scenes of him crushing the immortal emperors. If it was him, perhaps he could also defeat the 5 immortal emperors on the other side. However, he would not be able to crush them completely. It was also impossible for him to do so without suffering any injuries. He would certainly have to pay a certain price. Besides, if the other party had the intention to escape, he did not have the confidence to capture them alive. How could it be so easy to capture an immortal emperor alive? It was even harder than killing them. Ning Fan captured the immortal emperors alive by relying on the heaven-fixing technique of the Eastern Heaven ancestor. He did not know this technique. To Ning Fan, the heaven-fixing technique was just one of the many trump cards that he had. Good young man. I didn't expect such a talented young man to appear in the future. Old Devil Bai exclaimed. He who had never been convinced by others was actually convinced by Ning Fan. There could only be one greatest devil of the Eastern Heaven in an era. As the greatest devil of the Eastern Heaven in different eras, Old Devil Bai had always looked down on Ning Fan. That contempt did not lessen even after Ning Fan defeated Chong He. Old Devil Bai did not know about Great Emperor Chong He's concealment. He only knew that when he was young, before he entered the Immortal Emperor realm, he had defeated a 6th Tribulation Immortal Emperor. He seemed to be able to do what Ning Fan could do. He might even be able to do it better than Ning Fan. Who was Ning Fan? However, at this moment, Old Devil Bai deeply realized that he could not be compared to Ning Fan at all when he was young. Even if he was at the 9th Tribulation Immortal realm now, he might only be slightly stronger than Ning Fan, who was at the Immortal Venerable realm. In terms of techniques, he was far inferior to Ning Fan, monster. A mere Immortal Venerable could actually do what he could not. He was truly a monster. If this young man couldn't become the greatest devil of the Eastern Heaven of this generation, who else could? A bunch of fuckers still want to punish such a hero? What a bunch of idiots! Yuan Dan Emperor still maintained his sage-like smile on his face. However, the slight twitching of his lips clearly showed that his heart was not calm at all. He was not happy about Ning Fan's brilliant battle achievements at all. Impossible! This is absolutely impossible. A mere Immortal Venerable could actually defeat 5 Immortal Emperors of the Dragon Horses without any strength to fight back. Moreover, he even summoned a wisp of Sacred Dragon Ancestor Cloud. How could he still be defeated? That young man Ning Fan has already become so strong. He is just an Immortal Venerable. Just an Immortal Venerable. Moreover, the He-2 mirror was actually broken by this young man. This shit stirrer. That damned shit stirrer. Without the He-2 mirror, I'm afraid the plan of the Grand Divine Oracle of the other races will change a little. She will certainly be furious. This young man deserves to be killed. It seems like I need to find a chance to get rid of this young man secretly. Now that ancient chaos is dead, this old man no longer has anything to worry about. It doesn't matter even if I kill this young man. As for his cross-shaped light ring, this old man already has a way to avoid it. As for his primordial true body, that is a variable. However, if this old man can borrow the hands of the other races, perhaps, there is still a chance for me to obtain the key to the stone gate of heaven desolation in this young man's yin-yang locket. Yuan Dan Emperor suppressed the turbulent waves in his heart and secretly thought of a vicious plan. Even so, he still could not help but admit defeat. The strength that Ning Fan had shown really made it difficult for him to plot against him. He needed to think of a long-term plan. It seems like I need to find a chance to discuss this with Ma. Ning Fan did not care about the tremors of the Taiyuan Ferry. At this moment, he was in the clouds above the Guangzhong Pass, trying to refine the wisp of cloud light that he had seized. Even though it was just a wisp of cloud light, it seemed to contain an extremely profound transformation of the profound gate. That transformation was something that even he who was at the 2nd level of the celestial being realm could not understand. This could only mean one thing. The transformation of the divine ability contained in this cloud light was beyond his comprehension of the 2nd level of the celestial being realm. What kind of concept was that? A 3rd level of the celestial being realm would have eyesight that was comparable to that of a primitive saint. A 2nd level of the celestial being realm would have eyesight that surpassed most of the quasi-saints who were at the Vipralopa stage. Even with Ning Fan's eyesight, he still could not see through this cloud. It was enough to say that the transformation of the divine ability contained in this cloud had already exceeded the scope of the 2nd level and reached the 3rd level. Sacred Dragon Manifestation. Ancestral Cloud Protection. This was the incantation that the 5th Prince, Long Mang, had shouted. In addition to the fact that this wisp of cloud light actually contained the will of a saint, Ning Fan was 90% sure that the ancestral cloud which made the 5 dragon horse princes and the 7 dragon horse princes' strength increase tremendously was a type of cloud technique of the 3rd level of the saint. Auspicious clouds were auspicious clouds. Many 2nd-level cultivators liked to cultivate auspicious clouds to add the transformation of their divine abilities. However, those were just the auspicious clouds of the 2nd level. Ning Fan had never been interested in this level of auspicious cloud technique. However, if it was the 3rd level of the auspicious cloud technique, it would be an exception. If I forcefully devour this wisp of cloud light and integrate it into my primordial true body, I wonder if it can increase the defense of my primordial true body to another level. Ning Fan tried to erase the will of the saint in the cloud light. He had even devoured the dust tree which contained the will of the Tribulation Lord. Why would he be afraid of a mere saint's will? Of course, he was not afraid of it. However, erasing the will of the saint would take a lot of time. It was not something that could be done in a short period of time. 6 days later, Ning Fan still had not completely erased the will of the saint in the cloud light. However, the formation of the Guangzhong Pass had already been repaired. It was time to continue attacking the next pass. He had no choice but to temporarily put aside the matter of refining the cloud and set off again to lead the team to attack the next pass. The battleship carried Ning Fan and his group along the unobservable magnetic path of heaven and earth. Thunder, Immortal True Monarch, and the others did not leave. All 3 of them were injured. Originally, they should return to the Taiyuan ferry to treat their injuries. However, when they thought about the fact that Ning Fan had captured 5 immortal emperors of the foreign races, they hesitated. Ning Fan had taken down 6 immortal emperors in total. This time, he had really broken through the heavens of the 11th water path. Who knows what kind of dangers and revenge would await him in the next pass? It was necessary for them to stay by Ning Fan's side and continue to help him. To Ning Fan, the danger level of the battle with the 5 immortal emperors of the Dragon Horse tribe was close to 0. Thus, he did not feel excited at all. However, to the people of Thunder, Immortal True Monarch, this battle was definitely a life-or-death battle. It was a battle that could be remembered as a classic battle in their lives. The friendship between women could be formed because of many unimportant things. It could also be broken because of many inexplicable reasons. However, men were different. The friendship between men could be formed because of wine and meat. It could also be formed because of life and death. The friendship between wine and meat was not as important as the friendship between life and death. During the battle that day, they had gone through several life and death situations and held each other's necks. How could they not be friends of life and death? When a friend of life and death was in trouble, how could they leave alone? Due to the unparalleled divine might that Ning Fan displayed, Thunder, Immortal True Monarch, and the Great Emperor of Machine Crafting were already convinced by him. At the same time, they were worried that Ning Fan might encounter more immortal emperors of the foreign races in the future. How could they be willing to return to the Taiyuan ferry alone to treat their injuries? If Thunder, Immortal True Monarch did not leave, Fairy Yuhua, who was his puppet, would naturally not leave as well. This matter had already been exposed by the 7th prince of the Dragon Horse tribe. Thus, Thunder, Immortal True Monarch decided not to hide it anymore. Instead, he openly told everyone that his Dao companion was indeed a puppet. Ning Fan clicked his tongue and sighed. An immortal emperor-level puppet actually managed to hide from the eyes and ears of the entire Eastern Heaven. From this point of view, this Thunder, Immortal True Monarch did have some capabilities. These were all just gossip. Ning Fan actually did not care whether the Thunder, Immortal True Monarch and Fairy Yuhua would follow him or not. During the battle that day, the strength that the 2 of them displayed could not satisfy Ning Fan. Thus, he did not have high expectations for them. It did not matter whether they followed him or not. Of course, if they follow him, Ning Fan would still appreciate their kind intentions. Even though you are very weak, as for the Great Emperor of Machine Crafting, this person could actually come and go freely in the chaotic magnetic force of the World River using his deduction technique. Ning Fan knew that he would not be able to do that. Thus, he sincerely admired the Great Emperor of Machine Crafting. Even though this person's strength was also very weak, At least he had a skill. Thus, during their journey to the next stage, in addition to dealing with the foreign races that ambushed them along the way, Ning Fan seized the time to ask the great emperor of machine crafting about his deduction technique. When he was free, he would go and deal with the trace of ancestral cloud that could not erase the will of the sage. How could the Tao of divination be so easy to master? Ning Fan naturally could not improve his Tao of divination by just a few days of learning. However, he did benefit a lot from it. As the saying goes, there is bound to be one who can learn from others. If others ask him about the secret of the Tao of divination, the great emperor of machine crafting would certainly not tell them. This was the ultimate technique that he relied on to establish himself in the world. How could he reveal it to others? However, the great emperor of machine crafting had already been won over by Ning Fan. As long as Ning Fan did not ask about his biggest secret, he would tell him everything he knew. He really did not hide anything from others. In the beginning, when Ning Fan faced the chaotic magnetic force of the world river, he only felt that it was a mess. After the great emperor of machine crafting's explanation, the magnetic force of the world river gradually changed when he looked at it again. When he listened to the sound of the wind in heaven and earth, it also changed. This labyrinth-like waterway of the world river seemed to have its own pattern. When he looked at the treasure-seeking compass, he also had a strange feeling. Strange, this treasure-seeking compass seemed to search for more items and wider areas as its owner's Tao of divination increased. In the past, Ning Fan did not realize this because his Tao of divination was not enough. However, after the great emperor of machine crafting's guidance, his current Tao of divination seemed to have reached the minimum requirement to use the highest searching ability of the treasure-seeking compass. Ning Fan fiddled with the treasure-seeking compass. To his surprise, he discovered that as his Tao of divination improved slightly, the treasure-seeking compass could actually ignore the magnetic force of the world river and locate objects. Before this, he could not do this because of the interference of the magnetic force. At first, Ning Fan thought that the so-called search for everything in the world was just an empty name. However, it turned out that the treasure-seeking compass was not the weak one but Ning Fan himself. Ning Fan, who had reached the standard of his Tao of divination, casually took out the treasure-seeking compass. Suddenly, his expression changed. On the treasure-seeking compass, there were dozens of black light spots which pointed directly at the bottom of the world river. All of those black light spots were the extremely rare 800 million Een heavy wood in the Age of Chaos. Moreover, there seemed to be quite a lot of Een heavy wood in each location. The 800 million Een heavy wood could only be formed after 800 million years. It was the most difficult main ingredient to obtain in the recipe of the immeasurable pill. As for the immeasurable pill, it was the most important thing for cultivators to improve their cultivation base. A palm-sized 800 million Een heavy wood was enough to cause the forces of immortal emperors to fight over it. Ning Fan found it hard to imagine how many 800 million Een heavy wood were there at the bottom of the world river. Just the amount of Een heavy wood contained in the past few days' journey was enough for nearly 100 peak thought fragmentation realm cultivators to advance to the immortal venerables realm. How much Een heavy would there be in the entire 11 rivers? What a shocking amount of mineral resources. Unfortunately, they were all in the hands of the alien races. Ning Fan suddenly understood why there were so many ancient monsters among the alien races. They were simply inexhaustible. It was not only because of their strong reproductive ability but also because they had an inexhaustible supply of 800 million Een heavy wood. They also had an inexhaustible supply of the main ingredient of the immeasurable pill, which allowed them to continuously produce experts. It would be great if I could go to the bottom of the world river and plunder all the Een heavy wood. Unfortunately, Ning Fan sighed. The magnetic force on the surface of the water was already extremely strong. The magnetic force at the bottom of the world river was more than 10 times stronger than the magnetic force on the surface of the water. Ning Fan could not even determine the direction on the surface of the water. If he went to the bottom of the world river, he would probably lose his way even more. However, since he had reached the standard of his Tao of divination, he could use the treasure-seeking compass to determine the direction. Even though the process of using the compass to determine the direction was more time-consuming, It was not impossible for him to travel at the bottom of the world river. However, he still had a mission to complete. Besides, he did not know how many immortal emperors there were at the bottom of the world river. There was a high possibility that there were quasi-saints. Ning Fan did not think that all the immortal emperors of the alien races were useless trash like the ones he had captured. Among them, there must be experts who he could not reach today. It would be great if I had a massive amount of chi and blood like Black Rope. Even if I encounter a quasi-saint, it would be difficult for them to kill me. I would be able to come and go with ease and protect myself. Unfortunately, the process of obtaining the spirit refining cauldron and the incinerating furnace was very smooth. However, I just couldn't find this chi and blood gourd no matter how hard I tried. In the entire Eastern Heaven, there is actually no news about this item. Not even the ancient books have any records about it. It is almost impossible to cultivate the chi and blood like Black Rope. After witnessing Black Rope's abnormal chi and blood, Ning Fan's passion for the chi and blood gourd was even greater than the spirit refining cauldron and the incinerating furnace. During the dozens of years of waiting for the Dark Race's revenge, he secretly collected most of the gourds in the Eastern Heaven. However, none of them were the chi and blood gourd. Speaking of gourds, Ning Fan flipped his hand and took out the innate purple gourd. He obtained this item when he first entered the Eastern Heaven in the past. It was a good material for crafting innate magic treasures. Looking at this innate purple gourd, the scenes of him interacting with Candle Bao in the past replayed vividly in his mind. He thought of Candle Bao and the eyeball monster. Those two idiots should be in the Northern Heaven now. With the eyeball monster's obsession to protect the common people, it probably would not turn a blind eye to the chaos of the world river in the Northern Heaven. How could a person who even dared to enter the path of fire of a huge sect in the Heaven Wasteland turn a blind eye to the chaos in the Northern Heaven? Thinking of the eyeball monster, Ning Fan revealed a rare smile. However, when his eyes fell on the innate purple gourd again, his expression became solemn. This innate purple gourd made him feel solemn. Of course, it was not because it was a good material for crafting treasures. Ning Fan had completely given up on crafting treasures. There was no other reason. He did not have the time to spend millions of years crafting a low-grade innate magic treasure. If he wanted this kind of magic treasure, wouldn't it be faster to just snatch it? What made him feel solemn was the strange feeling that the innate purple gourd gave him. It seemed to have affected his divine spirit bloodline. However, this gourd was definitely not the legendary divine weapon of the divine spirit, the chi and blood gourd. If you ask me how I got all this information, of course, it was because I was chatting with the gourd. Let me ask you, are you the chi and blood gourd? I am a purple pseudo-artifact. I am a purple pseudo-artifact. I am a purple pseudo-artifact. What is a purple pseudo-artifact? Could it be related to the chi and blood gourd? Ha, ha. Ha, what are you laughing at? You are just a gourd. Is there anything that can make you happy? I am a purple pseudo-artifact. I am a purple pseudo-artifact. I am a purple pseudo-artifact. I will ask you one last time. What is a purple pseudo-artifact? Ha, ha, laughing again, Ning Fan was like a lunatic. He had been talking to the innate purple gourd for 1 hour, but he could not get any useful information. Other than the purple pseudo-artifact, the gourd would not say a third sentence. Ning Fan felt strange. He who had decided to embark on the path of divinity clearly felt that this innate purple gourd had an inexplicable relationship with his divine spirit chi. The relationship was not deep. However, it did exist. This was not the chi and blood gourd. However, it might contain some clues to find the chi and blood gourd, a purple pseudo-artifact. Purple technique, purple technique. I seem to have heard the two words purple technique somewhere before. Ning Fan closed his eyes and muttered to himself. After a while, he suddenly trembled. Didn't the wind mist finger that he comprehended from immortal sovereign Zido use the purple technique as a prefix? Elegance is a finger of quicksand. Aging is a period of time. Purple technique, wind mist, purple technique, purple technique. While Ning Fan was muttering to himself, a large group of Eastern Heaven cultivators behind him looked at each other. They could not understand what Ning Fan was doing. Why was he talking to a gourd? If they did not know that Ning Fan was a genius cultivator with normal intelligence, they would probably think that he was a lunatic. Fellow Taoist Ning's hobby is really strange. He actually knows how to chat with a gourd. Could it be that this action of his contains some kind of great Tao? Saints treat all living things as dogs, but fellow Taoist Ning does the opposite. He treats all living things as friends and communicates with all living things. Others laugh at me for being too crazy, but I laugh at them for not being able to see through it. Such a strange cultivation method is really unheard of. It's really admirable. When a superior scholar hears the Tao, he bows and walks. When a middle-aged scholar hears the Tao, he is hesitant to live or die. When a subordinate hears the Tao, he laughs. If he doesn't laugh, he won't be able to understand the Tao. This is exactly what I mean. The true great Tao is certainly different from others. How can ordinary people understand it? We are far inferior to it. Thunder, immortal true monarch, and the others sighed in admiration. When you admire a person to the extreme, even if he is really a lunatic, you will also think that he is a genius that no one can understand. It's just like when a person drinks water, only he knows whether it's hot or cold. It's just like how people say Tao, there is no need to understand. In such an uplifting atmosphere after the battle, the next stage was in sight. However, no one was afraid of the battle between the foreign races, because Ning Fan was here. Chapter 11:20. The 11th Waterway, the 6th Pass, the mysterious Lion Pass. Between the water and the sky, an impregnable pass could be seen in the distance, towering like a lion drinking water with its head lowered. The top and bottom of mysterious Lion Pass were densely packed with foreign race experts. As far as the eye could see, it was like a swarm of locusts, their numbers more than several million. On the battleship, all the eastern sky cultivators were brimming with energy. Ning Fan had already captured 6 immortal sovereigns of the foreign races in the past 2 battles, turning the 11th water path upside down. No one knew if there would be a large number of foreign race immortal emperors participating in the upcoming battle of Xianshi Pass, so everyone was prepared to fight to the death. However, along with the unceasing approach of the battleship, more and more eastern sky cultivators' expressions relaxed, and they felt that it was inconceivable. Inside the profound Lion Pass, there was actually no immortal emperor keeping watch. As such, under the suppression of the 4 immortal emperor realm experts, the members of the foreign races in this area did not have the strength to resist at all. They were defeated with just a single strike, and their blood flowed like a river. Mysterious Lion Pass, recovered in one battle. After that, it was the Yanbing Pass, Guxiang Pass, Tongyun Pass. All the passes were recovered one after another. Strangely, Ning Fan did not encounter any large-scale retaliation from the foreign races along the way. This feeling was exactly the same as when he had been waiting for the dark races to retaliate. It was as if he had punched nothing but air. In the blink of an eye, several months had passed. In the end, the last pass of the 11th waterway, the Lingyun Pass, was still breached by Ning Fan and his group. At this point, all the passes of the 11th waterway had been recovered. Every waterway had a main pass, which was the crux of the waterway's formation. The main pass's formation was the strongest among all the passes. The Lingyun Mountain Pass was the main pass of the 11th path. Capturing the main pass meant that their mission in the 11th path had come to a successful end. The only thing that he was concerned about was the fact that the foreign races had yet to show any signs of retaliation. This did not make sense. Ning Fan faintly felt that the fact that the foreign races did not come to seek revenge was just the calm before the storm. Thus, he did not dare to be careless and maintain the highest level of vigilance. However, Thunder, immortal true monarch, and the others were certain that the foreign races were afraid of Ning Fan. That was why they did not dare to seek revenge. A few days later, a transfer order was suddenly issued from Taiyuan Ferry, ordering Thunder, immortal true monarch, and the others to evacuate Lingyun Pass and support the other battlefronts. At this moment, Ning Fan was the only immortal emperor realm expert left in the soaring Cloud Pass. Ning Fan was not transferred away from this place. The order he received was to continue guarding Cloud Soaring Pass until all the other waterways were recovered. Only then would there be new arrangements. Among all the waterways in the eastern boundary river, the 11th road was the first waterway that had completed the restoration of the entire territory. It was not only because Ning Fan's group was strong, but also because there were not many passes in the 11th road. There were only 13 of them. The waterways that connected the west, north, and south heavens had more than 100 passes. Naturally, it would take a lot of time to recover them. As for the other backwater routes, most of them had only recovered less than half of their passes. Compared to the 11th route, their progress was extremely slow. Ning Fan stayed in the Lingyun Pass. The Cloud Soaring Pass array formation was extremely strong. Once it was completely rebuilt, even an immortal emperor would find it hard to break the array formation head-on. Under the automatic protection of the formation, Ning Fan's life as a guard became very relaxed. He didn't have to participate in the defense of the pass at all times. Occasionally, there would be some outsiders attacking, but they would be directly wiped out by the formation. In this way, Ning Fan would have a lot of time to deal with his personal affairs. After a few months of hard work, the wisp of Dragon Saint Ancestral Cloud was finally wiped out of the sage's will. Ning Fan began to try to refine that wisp of Dragon Saint Ancestral Cloud. As the Ancestral Cloud was refined bit by bit, Ning Fan's eternal true body underwent some changes. The surface of the golden flame armor and the giant shield had a few more auspicious cloud patterns, which greatly increased the defense of his true body. At the same time, the form of the protective golden light released by his eternal true body also changed. In the past, Ning Fan's protective golden light was just ordinary golden rays. Today, however, among the 10,000 rays of golden light, some of them began to turn into mist, forming the shape of clouds. When Ning Fan used the protective golden light again, a few golden auspicious clouds would appear indistinctly within the golden light, increasing the defense of the protective golden light by a lot. Just by refining a wisp of the sage's auspicious cloud, his defense had improved once again. This Dragon Saint Ancestral Cloud was indeed extraordinary. Unfortunately, there were no more of them. Otherwise, Ning Fan could have obtained more benefits. After refining the cloud, Ning Fan opened his incense flame world and took out the gold and silver of the heavenly Tao that his disciples had excavated during this period of time. After that, he secretly used the ancient country trading formation to purchase a few processed innate magic treasures from the heaven-reaching cult. Then, he refined them into divine liquid with his cauldron and consumed them. During the tens of years since the Dark Race returned, Ning Fan had purchased more than 100 processed innate magic treasures from the heaven-reaching cult to refine the divine liquid. The reason why he did not purchase perfect-grade magic treasures was because they were too expensive. They were more than 10 times more expensive than processed magic treasures. It was not worth it to use them for incineration. The quality of the divine liquid refined from perfect-grade magic treasures was not much different from processed magic treasures. The grade of the magic treasure was the most important factor in the refinement of magic treasures. It was not important if the magic treasure had flaws or not. In that case, Ning Fan certainly would not spend too much money in vain. Even though the heaven-reaching cult had countless treasures, processed magic treasures only made up a small part of them. It was impossible for them to have too many of them. Moreover, not all of the processed magic treasures were cheap. Ning Fan would only buy the cheapest ones. Every time he activated the ancient country trading formation, he would buy all the innate magic treasures that did not cost more than 10 gold ingots. He would not buy anything that was more expensive. Even though he had 8 heavenly Tao mineral veins with him, his mining speed had already reached the limit of the mineral veins. He could not go any faster. The amount of heavenly Tao gold and silver in his hands was limited. He could not afford to spend them recklessly. He must use them wisely. As the days passed, the other waterways were recovered one after another. The morale of the people in the Lingyun Mountain Pass was getting higher day by day. After Ning Fan had used up most of the heavenly Tao gold and silver in his hands, he no longer used them to refine magic treasures. Instead, he entered the profound Yin world and started to save Phoenix Emperor Chongming's daughter, Concubine Phoenix, 7 leaves lawn. Promises must be fulfilled eventually. Every time he uses the treasure-searching compass, he would remember the promise he made to Phoenix Emperor Chongming. He did not want to delay this matter any longer. However, he did not know how long it would take to save her. With that in mind, Ning Fan gave an order in advance. Unless the Ling Yun Mountain Pass encounters a powerful enemy that the formation could not eliminate, do not inform him to go out to battle, in a certain lady's chamber in the profound eastern world. Ning Fan called all 7 of the Tian Lan Phoenix maidens over and told them about the treatment. These 7 maidens were naturally the products of the 7 parts of 7 Leaves Land's demon soul and demon body. When they heard that Ning Fan was finally going to save them, the 7 of them were naturally overjoyed. However, when they thought about the difficulty of the fusion of their demon souls, they felt a little uneasy and worried. The 7 maidens had been imprisoned by Ning Fan for too long. The arrogance in their bones had long been worn away by time. When they saw Ning Fan again, the 7 maidens were very cautious. They did not dare to speak loudly. "Don't be afraid. Since I have made a promise with your father, I will not hurt you no matter what. You don't have to be so cautious in front of me," Ning Fan said with a smile. His eyes, however, drifted away slightly. He recalled Phoenix Emperor Chongming, who was overcautious and indecisive at the bank of the border river in the past. That clumsy father who wanted to see his daughter but did not dare to do so. How is he now? Can you really save me? The 7 maidens asked with uncertainty. "Yes, I can. However, it will take some time. Your soul is divided into 7 parts and each of them is in one body. Your demon body is also divided into 7 parts. If you want to fuse them together again, you first need to break them apart and rebuild them. Then, you will need to shatter the 7 parts of your soul and body respectively. After that, you will be able to recover your soul. Shattering the demon soul and demon body is extremely risky. I can't afford any mistakes. In the next few months, I will only do one thing, and that is to observe your demon soul and body to familiarize myself with the structure of every inch of your soul and body. This process might offend you. I hope you will cooperate with me. Brother Ning, don't worry. I know what's important. As long as it's beneficial to the recovery of my soul, I will cooperate with you." The 7 maidens answered straightforwardly. However, as soon as Ning Fan began his research, the 7 maidens regretted it. However, the arrow was already on the bowstring and they had no choice but to release it. "Take off your clothes." "Be Brother Ning, aren't you studying my demon soul and demon body? Why do you want to take off my clothes?" The 7 maidens were extremely embarrassed. They blamed Ning Fan for being too frivolous and wanted to take advantage of them. Ever since they regained their freedom, the 7 maidens lived together with Ning Fan's human cauldrons in the profound eastern world. It was also at this moment that the 7 maidens realized just how vast Ning Fan's harem was. In the profound eastern world, the number of maidens who had impure relationships with Ning Fan actually had to be counted in the tens of thousands. This man is just too scary. This man is just like a hungry lecher that only appears once in a million years. The 7 maidens recalled the scene where Ning Fan saw their naked bodies when they were just captured by him in the past. Then, they recalled that Ning Fan had once said that he wanted to keep them as human cauldrons. To me, plucking the 7 void abandoning human cauldrons is naturally not as beneficial as plucking the eternal cauldron. Therefore, I will find a way to merge your demon souls again. When that time comes, I will pluck all of you. Those were the words that Ning Fan had said in the past. The moment he opened his mouth, he would pluck them. Even though this man kept saying that he would not hurt them because of the promise, what if he goes back on his words? What if he suddenly becomes lustful? I might be able to resist him. Don't let your imagination run wild. I can see everything that is going on in your mind. The thing that you are worried about will not happen. Ning Fan was speechless and said in a deep voice. The 7 maidens' faces turned even redder as their thoughts were seen through. They no longer dared to let their imagination run wild. They could only listen to Ning Fan's instructions and take off their clothes one by one. Their fair and smooth skin was exposed to the air without any reservation. "You come here. Don't hug your chest. Every inch of your skin must be exposed. Why are you closing your legs so tightly? This place is indeed embarrassing, but it must be exposed. You, empty your mind and don't let your imagination run wild. Once your mind is in a mess, the soul power fluctuation of your demon soul will also be chaotic. It will be difficult for me to remember the value of your soul power wave. And you, don't call me shameless in your heart. If you don't want to be saved, just continue to cover your body. I am not really willing to save you. Facing the 7 maidens' beautiful bodies, Ning Fan would not have any evil thoughts. The more profound his bewitching technique was, the stronger his self-control would be. However, he would still feel a little awkward. The demon souls and physical bodies of the 7 maidens had been separated for a long time. It was extremely difficult and risky to reunite them. Ning Fan must understand every trace of their soul power and the structure of every inch of their physical bodies. Otherwise, it would be almost impossible for him to succeed. He had to carefully study the bodies of the 7 ladies, every organ, every inch of skin, every pore. He had to remember the soul power fluctuations of the 7 ladies, the blood flow rate, the number of cells. He had to thoroughly study the 7 ladies from the inside out. This process could only be described as shameful. It was not an easy task to study the human body at such a microscopic level. It was extremely exhausting. Fortunately, Ning Fan had the spirit recovering rice. If his mind becomes exhausted, he could replenish it anytime. 1 day passed. 2 days passed. A few days passed in a row. The 7 maidens gradually realized that when Ning Fan was studying their bodies, his expression was always calm. He really did not have the slightest desire. They finally believed that Ning Fan did not intentionally tease them when he asked them to pose in various embarrassing positions and expose their embarrassing parts. However, they still felt ashamed in the end. The feeling of spreading their legs and standing erect so that a man could carefully study their private parts was simply indescribable with words. Even though cultivators did not pay much attention to their purity, this was no longer a matter of purity. It felt like they had lost their dignity as members of the Phoenix clan. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. The 7 maidens began to get used to Ning Fan's research. Every inch of their skin had been deeply engraved in Ning Fan's mind. He had already seen them to the point where he could no longer look at them. Getting used to it was a very scary thing. At this moment, when the 7 maidens were ordered by Ning Fan to pose in various embarrassing positions and expose their embarrassing parts, they no longer felt so conflicted because they had already gotten used to it. The 7 maidens thought that they would never show their shyness in front of Ning Fan again after they had gotten used to this level of shameful play. However, they were wrong. They were ridiculously wrong. In the first half a month, Ning Fan only looked at them. After that, he began to touch them with his hands. He pinched here, pinched there, poked there and pulled them apart to take a look. The most shameful thing was that as normal women, how could they not have any physiological reaction when they were being manipulated by men in such a shameful way? Every time this happened, the 7 maidens wished that they could die immediately. The spring water is blue in the sky. The painted boat listens to the rain and sleeps. Pooh, pooh. What kind of twisted poem is this? Ning Fan felt that he had reached a new level of invincibility. He was about to have facial paralysis. Inwardly, he was incomparably embarrassed. However, there was no expression on his face at all. He felt that he had never studied the structure of a woman so thoroughly in his entire life. He had seen through every single cell of them. His eyes were covered in green light. With his heavenly sight, he memorized the souls and bodies of the 7 maidens under extremely microscopic conditions. 1 month passed. 2 months passed. In Ning Fan's eyes, the bodies of the 7 maidens were no longer beautiful. The countless cells that made up their bodies were just like countless planets. If the pattern was formed, the human body would be the starry sky. What femme fatale, what beautiful jade-like beauties and what beautiful skeletons. All of them could no longer be seen. At this moment, Ning Fan was already 90% confident about the recovery of the 7 maiden souls. As for the remaining 10%, he could only do his best and leave it to the heavens. In the past 2.5 months, the 7 maidens had been looked at and touched by Ning Fan. How could they not feel any emotions in their hearts? That kind of emotion might not necessarily be feelings. Instead, it was a kind of habit. It was a kind of passive endurance and desire that was transformed from shame. However, when Ning Fan suddenly stopped all of his research, the 7 maidens felt a sense of emptiness instead. It was as if they were reluctant to part from Ning Fan's touch. They could not forget the feeling of floating in the air from time to time. It was as if they had become addicted to it. Phoenix Emperor Chongming is an expert in divination. I wonder if he had foreseen that his daughters would be studied by me like this. However, the process of research is indispensable. Even though I have a clear conscience, I have still been disrespectful to him in this matter. Ning Fan began to truly restore the souls of the 7 maidens. He skillfully smashed the demon souls and demon bodies of the 7 women into pieces. The bodies of the 7 maidens exploded. However, they did not explode into a mist of blood. Instead, they turned into countless specks of starlight. It was indescribably mysterious. Ning Fan was originally unable to destroy a human body into specks of starlight. However, after studying the 7 Phoenix Maidens this time, he actually managed to do it. The human body was the starry sky. Every cell and every undetectable molecule and atom were planets orbiting in the starry sky. In Ning Fan's eyes, the 7 maidens' bodies had become 7 broken parts of the starry sky. He must reassemble the 7 parts of the starry sky into one and reassemble them. This process did not allow the planets and patterns in the starry sky to be damaged. Moreover, it required him to repair every single cell accurately. The difficulty was simply unimaginable. Rearrange, reassemble. Another month passed. Ning Fan finally merged the vast starry sky into one. An elegant and refined naked lady walked out from the starlight. After she put on her clothes, she lowered her head at Ning Fan with a blushing face and said softly, "Thank you." Her tone was filled with joy. After all, it had been her dream for many years to merge her 7 souls into one. She had never thought that there would really be a day when her 7 souls would merge into one. In the past, her father told her that he had already deduced the location of her savior. However, she did not believe him. In the past, when Ning Fan captured her, he claimed that he could help her restore her soul. She did not believe him either. However, at this moment, she had no choice but to believe in Ning Fan's extraordinary talent. He could actually do something that even her father and many demon emperors in the heavenly demon world could not do. Even though this man is a pervert, he is really capable. You don't have to thank me. I saved you just to fulfill my promise to Senior Phoenix Sovereign. Moreover, I have offended you during the treatment process. I hope you can forgive me. Brother Ning also had no other choice. That's why he did it. I have already forgotten about this matter. I hope Brother Ning will not mention it again. 7 Leaves Land's face was so red that it could drip blood. She did not want Ning Fan to mention the shameful treatment process again. She did not want to recall the embarrassing scenes of her being caressed by Ning Fan again and again. No matter how thick-skinned Ning Fan was, he could not hide his embarrassment. 7 Leaves Lan wished that she could dig a hole in the ground and hide inside it. Have a good rest, miss. Here are some pills. They might be helpful for you to recover your strength. Since I have something to do, I won't stay any longer. If I have the chance in the future, I will certainly fulfill my promise and send you back to the Phoenix clan. Ning Fan took out some pills and gave them to 7 Leaves Lan. He could not hide the exhaustion on his face. The treatment process that had lasted for several months could be said to be mentally and physically exhausted. Even if he had eaten the spirit-recovering rice, he still needed a good rest. Even though 7 Leaves Land's 7 souls had merged into one, it would still take some time for her to recover to her peak. Ning Fan's pills were like timely help. After receiving the pill bottle from Ning Fan, 7 Leaves Land's face became even redder. Her finger accidentally touched Ning Fan's finger. It was just an extremely normal physical contact, and a large number of embarrassing and indescribable scenes of research suddenly appeared in her mind. It's this pair of hands. He pulled her apart time and time again. He caused her sensitive body to break the dam time and time again. As she was distracted, she actually forgot to thank Ning Fan for giving her the pills. When she regained her senses, she realized that Ning Fan was already outside the house. She quickly called out to him. "What's the matter?" Ning Fan asked in surprise. "Thank you. It's just some pills. You don't have to take it to heart, Mississippi. Brother Ning. You are actually a good person. That year, I attacked you in the Yellow River Maze. Please forgive me. I have already forgotten about the grudges in the past." Ning Fan's expression remained the same, but he was rather speechless inwardly. Why was he given a good person card out of nowhere? Then, he thought of something and reminded Seven Leaves Lawn. "Fortunately, you stopped me. I forgot to remind you. Even though your 7 souls have merged into one, it will still take some time for your demon souls to truly adapt to the unification. During this period of time, if your 7 souls reject each other and your soul power goes out of control, just burn some incense and pray in this profound world. I will sense it and come over to treat you." Huh? There's still a follow-up treatment? Seven Leaves Land's face was filled with embarrassment. Could it be that I still have to be manipulated by Ning Fan in the future? Why is it like this? The corner of Ning Fan's mouth twitched. He saw through Seven Leaves Land's reluctance. Does she think that I am very willing to put in so much effort to treat her? Does it cost me nothing to consume my mental energy like water? My spirit recovering rice will decrease every time I use it. Seeing Ning Fan's displeasure, Seven Leaves Lawn was a little afraid. She gritted her teeth and quickly tried to salvage the situation. "Brother Ning, don't misunderstand me. I don't mean anything else. If Brother Ning still wants to treat me, I can endure it." "Endure what? Endure being violated? As expected, you still treat me as a thief. Forget it. I won't explain anymore." Ning Fan endured his speechlessness and comforted Seven Leaves Lawn a few more times. Then he left, leaving Seven Leaves Lawn alone on the same spot. She wanted to cry but had no tears. She secretly prayed that her soul power would not go out of control. Otherwise, she would continue to be ravaged by Ning Fan. After saving Seven Leaves Lawn, Ning Fan had one less burden in his heart. He instantly felt much more relaxed. When he recalled the mysterious process of breaking Seven Leaves Land's physical body into a starry sky, he felt that he had benefited a lot from saving her this time. He actually had a higher level of understanding towards the Tao of the human body. After returning to the Ling Yun Pass, what awaited Ning Fan was the peaceful life of guarding the pass as usual. However, this time, the peace did not last for too long. The Primal Core Great Sovereign, who was the main commander, suddenly led his disciples and crossed the Taiyuan Pass. The purpose of this trip was none other than to reward Ning Fan based on his contributions. In order to commend fellow Taoist Ning for your contribution in capturing 6 emperors, the Alliance Master has specially entrusted me to bring these rewards to the Ling Yun Pass. All the other fellow Taoists have their own missions to complete. Only I am still free. I was thinking that I can take this opportunity to get closer to fellow Taoist Ning. Thus, I simply accepted this mission and specially came to this place. The rewards were some refinement materials for innate magic treasures. They were considered precious to ordinary immortal emperors. However, to Ning Fan, they did not mean much. The Primal Core Great Sovereign stated his purpose of coming and talked cheerfully with Ning Fan. From time to time, he would reveal his intention to befriend Ning Fan. On the surface, Ning Fan was chatting with the Primal Core Great Sovereign. However, deep down, he was secretly vigilant of the Primal Core Great Sovereign's intention of coming. He knew it very well. This Primal Core Great Sovereign had long coveted his Yin-Yang locket. Back then, when Sun Luo was wreaking havoc in the eastern heavens, this person had even asked Sun Luo for this item. As for this smiling tiger who secretly coveted the Yin-Yang locket, Ning Fan certainly would not sincerely befriend him. He was just feigning civility. After secretly activating his divine spirit talent that allowed him to communicate with all living things, he heard the following words: the Primal Core Great Sovereign's clothes. Kill Ning Fan. Kill Ning Fan. Kill Ning Fan. The Primal Core Great Sovereign's storage pouch. Kill Ning Fan. Kill Ning Fan. Kill Ning Fan. The Primal Core Great Sovereign's shoes. Kill Ning Fan. Kill Ning Fan. Kill Ning Fan. Ning Fan was speechless. Just how much does this primal core great sovereign want me to die? Even his clothes and shoes were tainted with killing intent. It was obvious that this person had been venting his killing intent to me behind my back. Unfortunately, no matter how hard the primal core great sovereign tried to conceal his killing intent, he could not hide it from the universal communication. This person has killing intent towards me. He doesn't have the slightest intention of befriending me. He obviously didn't come all the way to the Ling Yun Pass and accepted this difficult task just to befriend me. I'm afraid he has other intentions. I have to be careful. The primal core great sovereign thought that he had concealed his killing intent very well. However, he did not expect that Ning Fan had already seen through everything. Thinking back to the fact that the foreign races had yet to take revenge on him and this primal core great sovereign had coincidentally come all of a sudden with hidden killing intent, Ning Fan's eyes flashed. He seemed to have guessed. If this person really has ulterior motives, he probably won't leave immediately after giving me the reward. Sure enough, after the primal core great sovereign handed Ning Fan the reward, he did not leave immediately. Coincidentally, his battle arc was malfunctioning. It would need at least 10 days of maintenance before it could be used again. As such, the primal core great sovereign had no choice but to stay in the Ling Yun Pass for a while and wait for his battle arc to be repaired. What was even more coincidental was that on the 6th day of the primal core great sovereign's stay in the Ling Yun Pass, a large number of auspicious signs suddenly appeared 3,000 li away from the Ling Yun Pass. It was the sign of the emergence of a unique treasure. I didn't expect that there would be a treasure appearing not far from the Ling Yun Pass. Looking at the scale of the auspicious signs, it seems to be an innate magic treasure. I want to go there and have a look. Unfortunately, my battle arc has yet to be repaired. I would like to borrow fellow Taoist's battle arc. I wonder. Ning Fan also seemed to be very interested in the emergence of the unique treasure. Not only did he agree to lend the primal core great sovereign his battle arc, he even requested to travel with the primal core great sovereign. The primal core great sovereign pretended to refuse, as if he was unwilling to travel with Ning Fan. He was afraid that Ning Fan would share his treasure with him. However, he still had a favor to ask from Ning Fan after all. In the end, the primal core great sovereign had no choice but to compromise with Ning Fan. He reluctantly made an agreement with Ning Fan. If the two of them really discover a treasure during this trip, they would have to collect it based on their own abilities. It was impossible for him to share the treasure equally with Ning Fan. When the battle arc carried the primal core great sovereign and Ning Fan out of the formation of the Ling Yun Pass, the primal core great sovereign was overjoyed. This brat actually took the bait so easily. Sure enough, he is blinded by greed. Indulging in greed is the sea of bitterness. Burning with greed is the pit of fire. Let this old man teach you about this. As for the tuition fee, of course, it's your life. Chapter 1121. At the moment when Ning Fan flew out of the Ling Yun Pass, an illusory figure that looked exactly the same as the primordial pill sovereign seemed to have sensed something and smiled. According to the information that my true body sent, that kid Ning Fan has already stepped into the trap and is heading towards this place. The illusory figure was none other than the second primordial spirit of the primordial pill sovereign that he had cultivated for many years. However, it was unknown why it appeared in this remote water region. At this moment, there were hundreds and thousands of gigantic foreign beasts that were as large as mountains beside the second primordial spirit of the primordial pill sovereign. Thanks to fellow Taoist Yuan Dan's brilliant plan, we really managed to lure that immortal venerate Ning here. If we can really kill him this time, I will definitely report to the great divine priest and ask for your reward. Among these thousands of gigantic beasts, there were 16 immortal emperors of the foreign races. If it wasn't for them suppressing their auras, this place would definitely be filled with ferocious wolves. Among the 16 emperors, 10 of them were from the Dragon Horse clan while the rest were helpers invited by the Dragon Horse clan. Ning Fan would never expect that there would be 16 immortal emperors of the foreign races ambushing him here. After all, the war between the foreign races and the Eastern Heaven had not broken out yet. Immortal emperors of the foreign races could not leave the water on a large scale. However, in order to kill Ning Fan, The foreign emperors of the 10 Paths could not care less and actually sent out such a large army. It was imaginable what kind of war would break out if Ning Fan came here. Moreover, this was because the seal that immortal sovereign Zido placed in the boundary river had not been completely destroyed. The 11 Paths could only send out these 16 immortal emperors at most, which was already the limit. If not, there might be more immortal emperors who would come here to assassinate Ning Fan. If you can kill that kid Ning Fan, you have to give me his Yin Yang locket. Everyone, don't forget this promise. Sovereign Yuan Dan seemed to have thought of something and reminded them. Fellow Taoist Yuan Dan, don't worry. Most of us from the Water Clan cultivate our physical bodies and abilities. Magic treasures are just external objects and not the key. All the magic treasures on this kid will belong to you. However, his flesh and blood will belong to us. It's hard for us to get out of the water. Naturally, we need to have a good meal. The flesh of an ancient immortal venerate must be delicious. Thinking about the taste of human flesh, many of the foreign races drooled. It's a deal. It's a deal. The second primordial spirit of the primordial pill sovereign felt rather proud of itself. When he thought about how he could seize Ning Fan's Yin Yang locket and obtain the key to the infinite wasteland gate of the extreme pill sacred region, he was extremely excited. This was a chance to leave the illusory world and step into the true world. How could he not be excited? The illusory world of dreams was barren of resources and spiritual energy, but he could still reach the eternal 7 calamities step by step. If he went to the true world, he was confident that he could reach the quasi-saint realm. He was even confident that he could try to become a saint. Compared to this, colluding with the outsiders wasn't something he felt the slightest bit ashamed of. The Fan could, then, fan Ning as Fan Wuji, the Emperor of the Emperor. However, he was afraid that the great Emperor Ji Kai, who was good at calculating, would be able to find out the whole story. If that is the case, even if he kills Ning Fan, he would probably become the public enemy of the allied army of the Border River Alliance. No, there's no need to worry about this. This time, it's different from the last time when the 5 emperors of the Dragon Horse came out of the water. I heard that in order to conceal the heaven's secret, the great divine priest of the foreign races had specially given me the fate-severing sword. No matter how strong that old man Tian Saint Fan is, he certainly won't be able to tell the whole story. It's impossible for him to know that I have the intention to kill Ning Fan. When he thought of this, the sovereign Yuan Dan could not hide his joy. He burst into laughter. It was as if he could already see the fertile spiritual land of the true world waving at him. At first, the place where the auspicious sign appeared was only 3,000 li away from Ling Yun Pass. With the speed of the battleship, which was comparable to the ancient cultivators, they arrived at this distance in an instant. Ning Fan looked at the center of the auspicious sign. Of course, he knew that the appearance of the so-called rare treasure was probably a scheme of the sovereign Yuan Dan. However, he still decided to beat him at his own game. As far as his eyes could see, the clouds reflected rays of light that were 10,000 zhang long. It was as if the Milky Way was falling from the sky. It was extremely beautiful. There was also a strange fragrance coming from the center of the auspicious sign, spreading across heaven and earth. It was like the smell of poppy flowers, but it was slightly different when one smelled it carefully. At the center of the light, a silver gourd could be vaguely seen. It was floating and sinking in the light. Ning Fan's eyes moved slightly. He did not expect that the rare treasure that appeared in this place would be a gourd. However, when he thought of something else, he felt that it was reasonable. The gourd was covered by the rays of light. Ning Fan could only see its general appearance. There was a pair of silver horns at the mouth of the gourd. Its appearance was a little more strange compared to ordinary gourds. What was even more strange was that there were mysterious runes drawn on the body of the gourd. Those runes gathered together like a smiling ghost face. Ning Fan could clearly feel the innate qi from this treasure. Without a doubt, this ghost-faced gourd was an innate magic treasure. However, it was just a low-grade innate magic treasure. So be it low-grade innate magic treasure. I don't think that the sovereign Yuan Dan realm old man can tempt me with a mid-grade innate magic treasure, right? He doesn't have that kind of good stuff. Ning Fan thought to himself. Ordinary low-grade innate magic treasures could only be used as materials for Ning Fan's incineration. They would not be able to attract his attention. However, if it was a gourd-type magic treasure, it would be an exception. The news of Ning Fan collecting gourd magical treasures both in the open and in the dark had already spread across the eastern heaven. Everyone knew that Ning Fan was extremely passionate about them. It was exactly because of Ning Fan's preference that Sovereign Yuan Dan purposely chose to use this gourd with a ghost face to entice Ning Fan. The battleship tried to approach the ghost-faced gourd at the center of the auspicious sign, but the gourd suddenly released thousands of rays of gentle light, forcing the battleship to be unable to get any closer. Emperor Yuan Dan pretended to be surprised. What a powerful Khanate gourd! You should know that this battleship is a special item of the Taurus Palace. Ordinary Khanate Dharma treasures won't be able to stop this battleship from moving. While speaking, Sovereign Primordial Pill was secretly observing Ning Fan's expression. When he saw that Ning Fan seemed to be more interested in the gourd, he could not help but feel proud of himself. It seemed like he had placed the right bait. It was not in vain that he had shamelessly asked the great divine priest of the foreign races for this item. Ning Fan looked at the ghost-faced gourd with great interest. His interest was not entirely fake. He smiled and said, "This gourd seems to have some tricks up its sleeves. You and I didn't come here to collect them in vain." However, he did not know if this gourd was the divine tool he was looking for, the Qi and Blood gourd. It was difficult for Ning Fan to use the divine spirit bloodline in his body to accurately sense whether this treasure was a divine tool or not. He could only confirm it by snatching the gourd. He did not think that there would be so many coincidences in this world that he would encounter the Qi and Blood gourd of his dreams the moment he stepped out of his house. Of course, this possibility could not be completely ruled out. Ning Fan was about to use his divine ability to disperse the divine light in the sky and collect this ghost-faced gourd. However, the gourd suddenly released a sky full of silver flames, and with the help of the silver flames, it disappeared without a trace, escaping without a trace. Humph! How dare a mere spirit gourd try to escape? Fellow Taoist Ning, quickly use the battleship to chase after it. Don't let this treasure escape. Sovereign Yuan Dan urged. This. Ning Fan purposely dawdled and pretended to be hesitant. Why didn't fellow Taoist chase after it? Sigh, it's not like fellow Taoist Yuan Dan doesn't know about the dangers of the Realm River. Moreover, I've killed a few immortal emperors of the foreign races. I've long been secretly regarded as a threat by them. I'm not afraid if I'm just collecting magic treasures near the Lingyun Pass. However, it would be inappropriate if I were to chase after this gourd and accidentally go deeper into the water. Once we're discovered by them, they will certainly send out a large number of experts to kill us and seek revenge. By then, we'll be alone outside without the impregnable pass to protect ourselves. The consequences will be unimaginable. Fellow Taoist, you're wrong. The foreign races have lost 6 emperors in a row. They've been afraid of you for a long time. The fact that they haven't come to seek revenge on you is proof of that. You and I can chase after that gourd without worrying. Even if there's an accident, there's no need to worry. Even if we can't defeat it, can't we escape? I admit that my strength is not as good as yours, but my means of escaping are not something you can imagine. Even though you don't have the confidence to protect yourself, I have the confidence to protect you. Moreover, every opportunity bestowed by the heavens is accompanied by risk. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. If you miss this opportunity and this spiritual gourd, you'll surely regret it in the future. Sovereign Primordial Pill advised Ning Fan earnestly. Ning Fan's expression changed slightly, as if he was persuaded by Sovereign Primordial Pill's words. After a moment of hesitation, he gritted his teeth and made up his mind. He steered the battle arc and chased after the direction where the gourd had escaped to. Unfortunately, the speed of the battle arc was similar to that of ordinary immortal venerables. It was not much faster than the speed of the escaping gourd. Therefore, even after several hours of chasing, the distance between them and the gourd still did not shorten by much. However, the distance between the battle arc and the Lingyun Pass was getting further and further. The gourd that was escaping in a panic had actually brought it all the way to the deepest part of the 11 water paths. It was a dead water area that had been abandoned for many years. Since ancient times, very few people would come to this place. Between the water and the sky, there was not a single trace of wind. Even though the battle ark was moving at full speed, it could not bring up any wind. The air was cold and damp. There was also a fishy smell that filled the air. The surface of the water was covered by decaying algae. Countless wreckages of ships were floating in the air. Occasionally, there would be one or two ancient ships that were preserved in good condition among the algae. They gave off a strong smell of decay. Those were the battle arks of ancient cultivators. No one knew how many years had passed since they were destroyed. Some of the ancient ships had stone statues standing on them. Ning Fan faintly felt that those stone statues were not carved by humans. Instead, they were the corpses of ancient cultivators that had been weathered into stone. The fearful expressions on their faces before they died were vivid and lifelike. It was rather horrifying. These strange stone statues had existed on the ghost ships since ancient times. They drifted with the waves and died with everlasting regrets. Occasionally, there would be the corpses of ancient sea beasts that were as huge as mountains floating in the water. Those giant corpses had also turned into rocks, but they did not sink into the water. The atmosphere in this place was already eerie and terrifying. As he moved forward, more insect eggs began to appear on the surface of the water. In the beginning, there were not many insect eggs on the surface of the water. However, as time went by, the surface of the river was almost completely filled with insect eggs. They were densely packed and there were more than millions of them. Ning Fan could not even count them all. There are actually so many insect eggs here. Could it be that this is also the lair of a foreign race? While Ning Fan was pondering, he suddenly saw the ghost-faced gourd that had been running away explode with a bang. It shattered into countless silver flames and disappeared from heaven and earth. It had completed its mission to lure Ning Fan. At the moment when the gourd disappeared, the primordial pill sovereign who had been smiling at Ning Fan all along finally revealed his fangs. His face was still full of smiles, but he was already secretly activating his killing technique. He raised his hand and shot out several rays of golden light at Ning Fan, who was just inches away from him. Those golden light rays were actually incomparably sharp golden needles. The brilliance they emitted dyed the entire sky golden. If he was an immortal emperor who was careless, he would most likely be ambushed by the primordial pill sovereign. However, Ning Fan had been vigilant against the primordial pill sovereign since the beginning. Thus, he naturally would not be hit by the golden light rays. Ning Fan's eyes revealed a look of disdain. The golden protective light around his body was suddenly activated. There were even some golden auspicious clouds that were faintly discernible within the protective golden light. The golden needles that were sneakily attacking him were all deflected away. At the same time, the cross-shaped halos were activated. The ink seal spread out to 1,000 zhang and engulfed the primordial pill sovereign like a ferocious beast. The primordial pill sovereign's expression changed greatly. How could he be willing to be trapped by the cross-shaped halos? He made a tearing motion with his large hand. The space around his body immediately became distorted. At the moment when the space was distorted, he directly tore heaven and earth apart. He flew thousands of zhang away from the battle ark and escaped from the range of the cross-shaped halos. The golden needles that failed to land a sneak attack were recalled by the primordial pill sovereign. They turned into rays of golden light and protected his body. His eyes were extremely cold. "I have underestimated you. Since when did you start suspecting me?" The primordial pill sovereign was not an idiot. The fact that Ning Fan managed to dodge his sneak attack at such a close distance was enough to prove that Ning Fan had long been on guard against him. Ning Fan had probably seen through his plan long ago. "Suspecting? I have never trusted you. Why would I suspect you?" Ning Fan said with a smile. In the primordial pill sovereign's eyes, that smile was indescribably glaring. It was as if the smile was mocking him for his inferior scheme. When he thought of that, the primordial pill sovereign was so angry that he laughed instead. "Ha! What an arrogant brat. It turns out that you already knew that I had ulterior motives from the very beginning. However, you still walked right into my trap. How foolish and arrogant. Do you really think that I can't do anything to you even if you fall into my trap? It seems like capturing 6 immortal emperors of the foreign races in a row has made you quite arrogant. Do you know that I am not alone? I still have helpers here. Cut the crap. Ask all of your helpers to come out now. Ning Fan did not want to waste his breath. He swung both of his fists to the left and right. His ancient devil essence chi swept across like a dragon, shattering heaven and earth. Hundreds and thousands of experts of the foreign races fell out of the crack between heaven and earth. All of their faces were filled with different degrees of surprise. They were hiding here with the secret technique of the Heavenly Shadow Clan. Even the Eastern Heaven immortal emperors of the 7th Tribulation and 8th Tribulation might not be able to sense where they were hiding. However, Ning Fan seemed to have seen through everything. I heard from fellow Taoist Primal Core Realm that this brat is a celestial being realm cultivator. It seems like it's true. The younger generation is really going to surpass us in time. Is there really such a fine jade among the ants of the Eastern Heaven? A gigantic beast that looked like a red carp said with a solemn expression. He was a 6th Tribulation immortal emperor of the Hungong Fish clan. Ning Fan had killed many experts of this clan along the way. However, it was his first time encountering an immortal emperor. Humph! As expected of the person who captured the 6 princes of the Dragon Horse clan. You do have some capabilities. Unfortunately, you still have to die today. A huge white fish with wings said arrogantly. He was a 7th Tribulation immortal emperor of the Ing Fish clan. His cold chi was so strong that it could even freeze heaven and earth. You actually managed to break the divine concealment secret technique of my Heavenly Shadow clan. I thought that the Dragon Horse clan was exaggerating about you. It seems like it's true. A gigantic beast that was formed from shadows clicked its tongue and praised Ning Fan. However, there was an indescribable killing intent in its voice. This person was a 7th Tribulation immortal emperor. So you're the one who captured 6 of my brothers. The other princes of the Dragon Horse clan also arrived at this place. As soon as they saw Ning Fan, all of them glared at him. Ning Fan's expression remained the same, but deep down he was rather moved. He had only guessed that the primordial Pill Emperor would join forces with the foreign races. He did not expect that he would be right. Ning Fan's eyes scanned across the area. There were actually a total of 16 immortal emperors of the foreign races waiting to ambush him. Including the primordial core realm cultivators, there were 17 of them. Among them, there was no lack of 7th and 8th Tribulations immortal emperors. There were even 2 9th Tribulations immortal emperors. They stood silently behind the group of beasts, but they exuded an incomparably huge pressure that the other immortal emperors could not compare to. Of these 2 9 Tribulation immortal emperors, one was an immortal emperor of the Dragon Horse clan, and the other was a female emperor who had the upper body of a human and the lower body of a fish. She was extremely charming and looked a bit like the legendary mermaids. Below the Celestial Emperor, there were close to 100 Celestial Venerables and Celestial Kings. The rest of the beasts were at least at the Thought Fragmentation realm. With such a huge lineup, if any other Eastern Sky Immortal Emperor were to come here, they would most likely die 9 times out of 10. However, Ning Fan was different. He had even gone through the Dark Race alone. Why would he be afraid of the enemy's formation? Primordial Core Realm. Judging from how these foreign races addressed you as fellow Taoist, I suppose you have already surrendered to the foreign races. Do you know what the punishment is for joining the Covenant of the Border River, betraying it and murdering your allies? Ning Fan's tone was as calm as still water. That calmness was a sign that he really did not take his enemies seriously. Sovereign Primordial Core Realm snorted coldly, avoiding Ning Fan's words of betrayal. He waved his hand and the countless giant beasts behind him immediately launched their attacks at Ning Fan. There were giant dragons breathing dragon breaths, giant tortoises spitting out icicles and giant snakes spitting out venom. Hundreds and thousands of attacks gathered together. Even a quasi-saint realm cultivator would not be able to take them head-on and could only retreat. Relying on his speed which far surpassed ordinary immortal emperors, Ning Fan flew several thousand zhang in a flash and flew away from the battle arc, avoiding the first round of attacks from the group of beasts. Even though he managed to avoid the attacks, the battle arc could not. It was directly crushed into ashes by the attacks of the beasts. Humph! Unfortunately, the battle arc did not manage to avoid them. Without the battle arc, you won't be able to return to the Ling Yun Pass alone with the strength of your spirit sense. On the surface of the water, there are many of us who want to take your life. Under the water, there are even more immortal Emperor Realm old monsters. Due to the immortal sovereign seal, they can't all come out at once. Don't even think about living. Sovereign Primordial Core Realm sneered. The second round of attacks came in the blink of an eye. Countless abilities locked onto Ning Fan as if they had eyes of their own. When the number of attacks increased, it was impossible for Ning Fan to avoid all of them no matter how fast he was. In the end, he was still hit by some of the attacks. Fortunately, the golden light protecting his body was extremely powerful. When he revealed his eternal true body, he did not feel any pain or itch even when the attacks of some immortal emperors landed on his body. This young man has such a powerful defense. Some of the foreign races who could speak were shocked by Ning Fan's heaven-defying defense. No wonder you could capture 6 princes of my race. You do have some capabilities. However, no matter how strong your defense is, you won't be able to block this sword. The Dragon Horse Crown Prince, who had a 9 Tribulations cultivation base, suddenly revealed his eternal true body, turning into a giant with the face of a horse and the body of a human. The giant held a green light sword in his hand. The light sword was covered with great Tao patterns. The chi it gave off made Ning Fan shudder. It was actually a mid-grade innate magic treasure. Die! The Dragon Horse Crown Prince swung his sword. The entire world lost its brilliance and was replaced by the elegance of this sword. Countless giant beasts were frightened by the power of this sword. They hurriedly avoided it. While dodging, they shouted, "The power of the fate-severing sword is unstoppable, and let's quickly avoid it." However, Ning Fan was locked on by the killing intent of this sword. There was no way for him to avoid it. He could only take it head-on. Ning Fan, who had transformed into his true body, held a giant shield in front of him. Under the interweaving cross-shaped halos, he clashed against the sword light of the Dragon Horse Crown Prince. That incomparably sharp sword light was forcefully dispersed by Ning Fan. Ning Fan, on the other hand, did not have a good time either. The power of that sword made his blood and chi churn. He was inwardly shocked by the power of this sword. It was indeed a mid-grade innate treasure sword. With just his eternal true body, he probably could not block more than a few sword attacks. You actually managed to block my fate-severing sword. The Dragon Horse Crown Prince's eyes were filled with astonishment. After the initial shock, his killing intent became even stronger. Another peerless sword dashed towards Ning Fan. This time, he was not the only one attacking Ning Fan. There were several other immortal emperors who transformed into their eternal true bodies and launched a pincer attack at Ning Fan. Ning Fan's mind was as calm as still water. It was the calmness that he had tempered after going through countless battles of life and death. Raising his hand, he took out the sun, moon, and stars steel and struck it at the Dragon Horse Crown Prince, blocking the attack of the innate middle-grade treasure sword. The remaining attacks of the immortal emperors of the foreign races were neutralized by Ning Fan's Devil Fist. The ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike was launched like a storm. The long-range attacks of the ordinary immortal emperors of the foreign races could not even get close to Ning Fan. This young man has actually become so strong. Seeing Ning Fan fight against the immortal emperors of the foreign races with ease, Sovereign Yuan Dan widened his eyes and could not hide his astonishment. He knew about Ning Fan's achievements in the Eastern Heaven. He had heard about Ning Fan capturing 6 Dragon Horse Immortal Emperors in a row. He had also heard that Ning Fan went to the Dark Races alone and retreated unscathed. He had some understanding of Ning Fan's techniques. However, those were just hearsay. At this moment, When Sovereign Yuan Dan was facing Ning Fan, who had unleashed his eternal true body and his full strength, he could not help but shiver. How could a mere eternal immortal venerate be so strong? He could deal with the attacks of so many immortal emperors of the foreign races so calmly. I'm going to capture him. Seeing that the Dragon Horse Crown Prince was entangled by the attacks of the Sun Moon Star Steel and could no longer split himself to attack Ning Fan, the Nine Tribulations female empress, who was half human and half fish, finally could not hold back anymore and took action. Seeing her taking action, many of the foreign races began to cheer, Afro. Afro. Afro seemed to be the name of this female empress in the foreign races. The female empress, who was called Afro, raised her hand and a golden bow appeared in her hand. She shot 3 arrows at Ning Fan continuously. 1 arrow to the top of the head, 1 arrow to the heart, 1 arrow to the dantian. The destructive power of the golden arrow seemed ordinary, but it gave Ning Fan an indescribable sense of danger. Logically speaking, the sharpness of the golden arrow should not be able to penetrate his physical defense. However, chi before the 3 arrows could reach his body, Ning Fan's eternal true body let out 3 sounds of blood being pierced. His head, chest and dantian were slightly injured. Ning Fan raised his hand and shattered the 3 golden arrows. However, there was still a strange flash of golden light on the 3 spots where the golden arrows were shot. Ning Fan's eyes immediately turned grim. These golden arrows were actually a type of karma magic treasure. Once the bow is drawn, there would be consequences of being hit by the arrows. It was not enough to just block the arrows. It was rather similar to the candle bow. In the past, when his cultivation base was still low, he was injured by the candle bow in the ancient wild region. It was an attack that reversed karma. The difference was that this kind of attack was cast by a 9 Tribulation immortal emperor. Its destructive power was naturally far greater than the attack that Ning Fan suffered in the past. Oh, you actually only suffered light injuries after taking 3 arrows from me. The mermaid empress, who was called Afro, seemed to be a little surprised by Ning Fan's physical defense. One should know that even a 6 Tribulation immortal emperor would be severely injured after taking 3 arrows from her. She was an expert among the 9 Tribulation immortal emperors, and she was not far away from advancing to the quasi-saint realm. It's just a small Tao of karma. Why would I be afraid? Green light shot out from Ning Fan's eyes. With a tug of his hand, he broke the karma that connected heaven and earth to the 3 golden arrows. Then, the 3 golden arrows exploded and vanished without a trace. As for the wounds that Ning Fan suffered from the 3 arrows, they were also healed in an instant under the heaven-defying healing power of the cross-shaped halo. Afro frowned. She raised her golden bow again, preparing to shoot at Ning Fan. How could Ning Fan be willing to be injured by the arrows again? Even though his physical body was strong and the previous injuries were nothing to him, what if Afro had more powerful golden arrows? Ning Fan did not want to take the risk. He turned his hand and shot a ray of multicolored light at Afro. It was not an ordinary multicolored light. It was the unique enchanting technique of the descendants of ancient chaos, chaotic world purple light. The multicolored light turned into a huge net and flew towards Ning Fan. Afro's face was filled with disdain. She could feel that the power of Ning Fan's multicolored light net was very weak. It was probably not even as powerful as the attacks of some immortal venerables. If it was just this little bit of power, she would not need to block it at all. She would be unharmed just by relying on her mermaid body that she had cultivated for many years. Afro focused on aiming at Ning Fan. Just now, when Ning Fan made a tug with his hand, he had not only destroyed the karma of her 3 golden arrows but also many other karmic connections between heaven and earth. Those karmic connections that were destroyed were the Tao of arrows that she could use. Luckily, Ning Fan did not destroy all of them. Thus, her arrows could still hurt Ning Fan. Afro, who was focused on aiming at Ning Fan, did not have the leisure to block his multicolored light attack. Thus, she met with a tragedy. The power of the chaotic world purple light might seem insignificant. However, if it hit someone's body, with Ning Fan's current cultivation base that had fully activated his eternal true body, Almost no woman below the quasi-saint realm could resist his enchanting technique. As soon as the chaotic world purple light approached her, Afro felt that something was amiss. It was already too late for her to stop the attack. An incomparably large net of multicolored light enveloped her tightly, sealing all of her magic power and abilities. Traces of the enchanting technique penetrated Afro's body, causing her fair skin that was different from humans to be coated with a layer of alluring pink. It was the proof that her lust had been triggered by the enchanting technique. "Why, you're despicable! How dare you use an enchanting technique on me? Let me go! Quickly let me go!" Afro tried her best not to let out a moan. Her beautiful eyes were filled with anger. She wished she could glare at Ning Fan to death. Enchanting technique? What a small trick. Since ancient times, how many immortal emperors would use enchanting techniques during fights? It was not that they did not want to use it. It was just that the destructive power of enchanting techniques was usually very low. Using it would be useless. Thus, it was better to save some magic power and not use it. Because of this, Afro did not expect that Ning Fan would use his enchanting technique on her as soon as they met. Not only did she not expect it, but she also did not notice it at all. If she knew that the multicolored light was an enchanting technique, no matter how inconspicuous it was, she would more or less resist it to prevent her mind from being shaken by the enchanting technique and causing her arrow to miss its target. Ning Fan could only blame himself for merging the enchanting techniques of the two great enchanting masters, Great Emperor Ancient Chaos and Shizi Hua, into one. Currently, his enchanting technique was almost invisible. Unless it was a great enchanting master at the same level as him, no one would be able to tell that the chaotic world purple light that Ning Fan used was a type of enchanting technique. Ning Fan was also stunned. There were very few female emperors that he had fought with his full strength. Even though he would occasionally spar with Zhang Yu and the immortal Loli, they were just sparring with each other. He had never used his full strength like what he was doing now. Naturally, he had never used his enchanting technique to its fullest. Originally, he only planned to use the chaotic world purple light to mess up Afro's mind and make her arrows lose their accuracy. However, he did not expect that the effect of the chaotic world purple light was so great that it directly trapped Afro, preventing her from escaping. This was an unexpected gain. Ning Fan was not the only one who was stunned. All the experts of the foreign races at the scene were stunned. Their goddess Afro, who was known for her beauty, was actually subdued by Ning Fan in just a single move. How could this be possible? Enchanting technique? That's what the noble Lord Afro said. Could it be that there's actually such a terrifying enchanting technique in this world that can subdue a 9-tribulation immortal emperor with just a single move? It's impossible. However, the truth was right in front of their eyes. Quick, save Lord Afro. Some experts of the foreign races reacted and tried to save Afro from the net. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Ning Fan made a pulling motion with his large hand and pulled Afro into his palm along with the net. Why was she in his palm? Of course, it was because Ning Fan was currently maintaining his eternal ancient true body while Afro was just an ordinary size. Ning Fan grabbed Afro with his left hand and continuously channeled his enchanting technique into her body, causing her body to become weaker and weaker. In the end, she actually fainted from embarrassment and anger. With his right hand, he waved the ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike. With the endless magic power of the cross-shaped light ring, Ning Fan's fist force became stronger and stronger. Gradually, he managed to hit 3,000 consecutive strikes. The mountain-breaking attack of 3,000 ancient devils was extremely powerful. The giant bodies of 2 immortal emperors of foreign races were destroyed on the spot. Only their demon souls managed to escape. As for immortal venerables and immortal kings, Ning Fan had already killed more than 20 of them with his fists. He was too lazy to calculate the exact number. Since he was going all out, he did not put immortal venerables and immortal kings in his eyes at all. More and more experts of the foreign races showed fear on their faces. They looked at Ning Fan as if they were looking at a ghost. How could he not be afraid? Not long after this ambush began, Ning Fan had already destroyed the physical bodies of 2 immortal sovereigns and killed more than 20 immortal venerables and immortal kings. Besides that, he even captured Afro, who had a 9 tribulation cultivation base, alive. That was the noble lady Aphrodite. This was not the dragon horse crown prince who had captured a 6th tribulation or 7th tribulation realm. Afluo was a powerful existence who had half a step into the quasi-sage realm. However, she was captured alive by Ning Fan in just a single exchange. How could it not be shocking? Impossible. How could he capture a 9 tribulations empress so easily? Even if he is the successor of Ancient Chaos, he shouldn't be able to do this. Ancient Chaos's bewitching technique is definitely not this powerful. This young man's bewitching technique has actually surpassed Ancient Chaos's. Sovereign Primordial Pill's entire body was drenched in cold sweat. An extremely bad feeling rose in his heart. Today's perfect ambush, how could it possibly fail? Something that made Sovereign Primordial Pill break out in cold sweat had yet to happen. In the midst of the bitter battle, Ning Fan found a gap and planted layers of restrictive spells on the unconscious Afluo. Then he casually threw her into the profound Een world. Capturing Afluo was just a beautiful accident. It was impossible for such an accident to happen again because there was no longer a second female sovereign among the emperors on the scene. After a series of battles, Ning Fan had already figured out the actual strength of these immortal emperors of the foreign races. The other party definitely came prepared. They had even made specific arrangements to deal with him. Every time Ning Fan approached them with his speed and trapped an immortal emperor of a foreign race within the range of the cross-shaped halos, the other immortal emperors of the foreign races would immediately take action and rescue their companions from the halos. As for these immortal emperors of the foreign races, each of them had an immortal talisman on their bodies to protect themselves. Every time Ning Fan wanted to use the heaven sealing technique on them, the immortal talisman would automatically protect them, rendering them ineffective. Even though the ancient devil mountain breaking technique was powerful, each of these immortal emperors had thick skin and flesh. It was difficult to kill them, and their attacks were not weak either. The dragon horse crown prince's fate-severing sword in front of him and Afluo's karma golden arrow behind him made Ning Fan feel fearful. Other than that, there were also some immortal emperors of the foreign races who possessed strange abilities. They might not be enough to kill Ning Fan, but they could still ambush him. It was simply impossible to guard against them. As a result, Ning Fan was gradually injured by the attacks of the immortal emperors of the foreign races. More and more of them accumulated. The speed at which they were accumulating eventually surpassed the healing speed of the cross-shaped halos. Ning Fan could not help but admit that if he continues to rely on the cross-shaped halos, the eternal true body and the ancient devil mountain breaking technique, he would certainly die here in the end. After all, he was just an ancient immortal venerate. To him, it was already very heaven-defying to fight a few immortal emperors who were at a higher cultivation level than him. If he could still win against 16 to 17 immortal emperors who were at a higher cultivation level than him, those immortal emperors of the Doomsday Era would really be worthless. They might as well find a piece of tofu and kill themselves. My cultivation base is still too low. If that's the case, I can only rely on my magic treasures. When Ning Fan blocked the attacks of a few immortal emperors with his devil fists again, he suddenly took out 2 of his treasures, causing the expressions of the experts in the surroundings to change drastically. The immemorial lightning cauldron. The world bottle with water flooding. All of them were actually mid-grade innate magic treasures. Even though the Sun Moon Star Steel was powerful, it was only a single target attack. It was already very rare for it to be able to block the Crown Prince of the Dragon Horse clan. In the current situation, magic treasures that could attack a group were certainly more practical. Ning Fan did not plan to fight a war of attrition with these experts of the foreign races. He wanted to wipe out all of them in one fell swoop. Mid-grade innate magic treasures. He actually has 2 mid-grade innate magic treasures. Impossible. He isn't a quasi-Saint Realm expert. How is it possible for him to have so many mid-grade innate magic treasures? Including the twin steels that attacked the Crown Prince, Doesn't that mean he has 3 mid-grade innate magic treasures? Even a quasi-saint realm expert shouldn't do this. Defend with all your might. I'm afraid this brat is going to attack with all his might. Get into formation. Use the 1,000 Dragons Converging Water formation and combine our forces to resist this brat's all-out attack. All of the experts of the foreign races were shocked by Ning Fan's magic treasures. Sovereign Origin Pill also joined the foreign experts in forming the formation. Previously, when the foreign experts attacked Ning Fan, he was fearful of Ning Fan's strength. Thus, he only watched from the side and did not dare to attack Ning Fan personally as he was afraid that something might happen to him. However, at this moment, Ning Fan was obviously going to use his ultimate attack. If he still does not join the defense, he would definitely suffer a great loss. Thus, he no longer held back. The situation instantly became a little strange. On one side, there was a lone immortal venerate. On the other side, there were more than 1,000 experts of the foreign races. Excluding Aphrodite, there were still a total of 16 immortal emperors and 70 to 80 immortal venerates and immortal kings. Be it in terms of numbers or cultivation base, the foreign races had an absolute advantage. However, at this moment, thousands of foreign races were facing Ning Fan alone as if they were facing a formidable enemy. All of them formed a formation to defend themselves. They knew that Ning Fan was about to use his ultimate attack. However, there were some things that could not be blocked even if they knew about it. For example, the dazzling lightning light of the immemorial lightning cauldron. When the lightning light of the immemorial lightning cauldron shot out, countless foreign races were blinded by it. The lightning light penetrated their spirit sense and caused their formation to fall into chaos. The primordial pill sovereign was also blinded by it. At this moment, his eyes were bleeding and he could not see anything at all. He had no idea what Ning Fan was doing at this moment. His eyes could not see and his spirit sense could not sense anything as well. Even though some of the immortal emperors managed to reconstruct their eyes in an instant, they were still blinded by the lightning light of the immemorial lightning cauldron. No one could see clearly what Ning Fan was doing at this moment. All of them were frightened by the terrifying lightning light of the immemorial lightning cauldron. They only knew that they must defend with all their might at this moment. Each of them activated their defensive abilities to the maximum and tried to find a way to sense the outside world to resist the radiance of the lightning cauldron. Ning Fan himself also could not open his eyes under the dazzling light of the immemorial lightning cauldron. There was no need for him to open his eyes. Why would he need to open his eyes for the upcoming attack? He slapped the void space skillfully. Ancient formation marks that contained the light of the Big Dipper appeared in the sky in an instant, mobilizing all the water elemental power in the world. In an instant, the surface of the realm river turned into a sea that was as red as blood. The Boundless Sea. At the moment when he summoned the Boundless Sea, Ning Fan activated the bottle of water drowning the realm. The sky also turned into a sea. The Defying Mortal Sea. Those experts of the foreign races who could not open their eyes did not know what kind of strange scene was happening between heaven and earth. Even though they could not see it, they could instinctively sense that a great danger was approaching them. They wanted to form a defensive formation, but in the end, they were drowned by the incomparably heavy sea waves. This was the strongest water attack that Ning Fan had fused with the seawater of the Boundless Sea and the Defying Mortal Sea, Boundless Sea. Let's attack together and form a defensive formation. Impossible. What kind of sea wave is this? It's so heavy. We can't block it. Damn it. We can't block it. As members of the Water Clan, we actually can't block the enemy's water attack. My natal fish scales have been crushed. This sea wave is too powerful. Impossible. This is impossible. My physical body is going to be crushed. This brat's attack is too powerful. We can't fight him head-on. Let's run together. Otherwise, we will drown to death here. Damn it. Damn it. Miserable cries could be heard everywhere. After a long time, the waves subsided. Ning Fan kept the immemorial lightning cauldron, the flooded world bottle, and the sun, moon, and stars steel. He dispersed his eternal true body and stared at the water of the realm river which had regained its calmness. Above the boundary river, countless insect eggs were crushed by the waves. There were even corpses with dirty blood floating on the surface. This time, Ning Fan's indiscriminate attack directly cleared away all the insect eggs within tens of thousands of li of the water area and drowned more than 1,000 experts of the foreign races in one go. The bottle of water drowning the realm was supposed to be an attack that covered an entire realm. However, because of the seal that immortal sovereign Zido placed on the realm river, the water elemental power in this place was restricted. As a result, the range of Ning Fan's indiscriminate attack could only cover tens of thousands of li of the realm river. It was far from being able to flood an entire world. Ning Fan had already considered the fact that the immortal sovereign realm seal in the realm river would impose a restriction on the water flooding bottle. That was why he dared to use the bottle here. Otherwise, wouldn't he just flood the entire realm river? If this was the case, the eastern sky cultivators located in other parts of the boundary river would also perish together. Although he knew of the existence of such a restriction, he didn't know that it would be so great. If the water only covered tens of thousands of kilometers, it might be enough to deal with ordinary alien race formidable martial artists. However, it would be difficult to deal with those immortal Thearchs. Its power would be greatly reduced. Ning Fan sighed softly. If he did not sense wrongly, there were a total of 14 immortal Thearchs of the foreign races who managed to escape back to the bottom of the water with only minor injuries. If the water flooding bottle could exert its full power, it would definitely not have only caused minor injuries to these people. Those immortal Thearchs who were lightly injured were obviously frightened by Ning Fan's terrifying attack. They no longer dared to fight and could only retreat. Only the physical body of an immortal the arch-dragon horse with the weakest cultivation base was crushed by the waves. While he was severely injured, his true spirit was captured by Ning Fan. The unfortunate immortal the Arch who was captured by Ning Fan seemed to be the youngest prince of the Dragon Horse clan, the 16th prince. As such, Ning Fan now had a total of 7 Dragon Horse true spirits in his hands. At this moment, the weakened true spirit of the 16th prince was trembling in Ning Fan's hands. He was really frightened by the terrifying attack of Ning Fan's water-evolving world. Was that an attack that an ancient immortal venerable could use? With just a single move, he actually killed 70 to 80 immortal venerables and immortal kings. He even destroyed his own physical body and scared the rest of the immortal Thearchs away. It seems like all of your Dragon Horse brothers have abandoned you. Ning Fan said indifferently. Humph. They are just afraid of your water attack, so they temporarily went back to the bottom of the water. They will still come to save me. The 16th prince said firmly. Being afraid of Ning Fan was one thing. Maintaining the noble spirit of the Dragon Horse clan was another. Is that so? If they really dare to come out of the water to save you, I don't mind drowning them again. When my brothers borrow the great divine priest's sea-calming godly needle, your water attack will definitely. The 16th prince wanted to say something ruthless to Ning Fan, but he swallowed his words when they reached the tip of his tongue. He was afraid that Ning Fan would get too much information about them. Ning Fan, however, still managed to glean some information from the 16th prince's words. See steadying divine needle. From the name of this item, one could tell that it was a supreme treasure that could restrain water attacks. If those immortal emperors of the foreign races who had escaped really borrowed this item from the great divine priest, it would not be so easy for him to drown a world with water again. If you are sensible, let me go and my other brothers go. I can plead with the great divine priest to spare your life. The 16th prince said again. Cut the crap. Become this Ning's prisoner together with your 6 brothers. Ning Fan sealed the 16th prince heavily and locked him in the profound Yin world. Then, he looked at the vast sky with a mocking expression and sneered at a place where there was no one. Fellow Taoist Yuan Dan, are you still not going to show yourself? Don't tell me you want me to ask you to show yourself? Ning Fan's voice reverberated in the silent world, but there was no response. Seeing this, Ning Fan casually threw a punch at the place where there was no one, shattering the space. As the space collapsed, a strange-looking thing fell out from it. It looked at Ning Fan with a face full of fear. Judging from its qi, this thing was undoubtedly the true body of Sovereign Yuan Dan. His second primordial spirit had already drowned in the waves. From the looks of it, it would be difficult for people to associate this strange creature with the primal Pill Emperor. Sovereign Yuan Dan was in the same situation as the unlucky 16th prince. He was severely injured by Ning Fan and was on the verge of death. The reason why the other immortal emperors of foreign races could escape with light injuries was largely related to their identity as members of the water race. Sovereign Yuan Dan was a member of the water race. He was proficient in escaping through water and his water resistance was also high. Thus, drowning him to death was a good thing. However, Sovereign Yuan Dan was not a member of the water race. Not only was he not a member of the water race, but his innate attribute was also fire. Thus, he was naturally in conflict with water. Ning Fan's attack did not directly drown him to death. Due to his severe injuries, Sovereign Yuan Dan was forced to reveal his true form. His original appearance was not that of a human. Instead, it was an elixir with hair, a human face, and limbs. It turned out that the true form of the Sovereign Yuan Dan, whose name shook the entire Eastern Heaven, was actually a pill devil. Ning Fan had already known about this during the Sun Luo chaos in the past. Thus, he was naturally not that surprised at this moment. After being forced out by Ning Fan's punch, Sovereign Yuan Dan was shocked beyond words. He turned into a rainbow and tried to escape. Unfortunately, he was not Ning Fan's match even when he was at his peak. Now that he was severely injured and only had his true form left, it was naturally impossible for him to escape from Ning Fan's palm. Ning Fan caught up to Sovereign Yuan Dan in a flash and gave him a good beating. "Let me go." Sovereign Yuan Dan actually wanted to beg for mercy. Unfortunately, Ning Fan completely ignored Sovereign Yuan Dan's begging. After tens of breaths, Sovereign Yuan Dan lost consciousness after being beaten by Ning Fan. In the end, he was still captured alive by Ning Fan. In this way, Ning Fan could be considered to have captured two immortal emperors. Two immortal emperors might seem impressive, but compared to Ning Fan's previous achievements, it was nothing. Speaking of which, the second captive, the Sovereign Yuan Dan who was a pill devil, seems to be quite tasty, Ning Fan pondered inwardly. If he eats this huge pill of Sovereign Yuan Dan, I wonder if his cultivation base will increase tremendously. Sovereign Yuan Dan was an immortal emperor-level pill devil. The origin of his pills was very difficult to detect. It would take a lot of effort to figure it out. If the true form of a Sovereign Yuan Dan was an immortal emperor realm pill devil, then such a huge pill would be enough to make his cultivation base skyrocket. However, if it were other types of pills, it might not necessarily be able to increase his cultivation base. Sovereign Yuan Dan, who was in a coma, naturally did not know that his lifetime of cultivation base was about to go down the drain. As for Ning Fan, he was thinking about how to consume this huge pill of his. Chapter 11:22. Ning Fan did not have the time to care about those captives for now. As for the spoils of war, most of the foreign races did not use magical treasures and they rarely carried storage pouches with them when they went out. Most of their belongings were hidden in their caves at the bottom of the river. Therefore, even though Ning Fan killed quite a number of them in this battle, he did not get much from them. Ning Fan did not get any innate magical treasures from capturing the 16th prince of the dragon horse, but he devoured his innate dragon fire. Ning Fan did not have the time to search Aphrodite's body when he captured her. Her golden bow seemed to be hidden in her dantian. Perhaps it would be a good magical treasure. After capturing Sovereign Primordial Pill, other than earning an extra large-sized pill for free, Ning Fan had also obtained his storage pouch. As a member of the Eastern Heavens cultivators, Sovereign Primordial Pill retained the habits of the Eastern Heavens cultivators. He always carried a storage pouch with him when he went out. Ning Fan was not interested in the strength of Sovereign Yuan Dan. However, Sovereign Yuan Dan's storage pouch was unexpectedly rich. Heavenly Emperor Qi Breaking Needle, relic of the ancient Heavenly Court. Innate low grade. Half damaged. Its power is less than 10%. This was the treasure that Sovereign Yuan Dan used to sneak attack Ning Fan. According to this treasure, Sovereign Yuan Dan was only its second master. Its first master was the former master of the ancient heavenly court, Heavenly Emperor. Demon's Sealing Sword, half-damaged innate low-grade magical treasure. Its power is less than 10%. This treasure claimed to be the sword of Great Emperor Mo Zhong, the Devil Lord of the Devil Conferral Summit. Dark Star Child, concealed weapon type innate magical treasure. Half-damaged. Its power is less than 10%. This treasure claimed to be the hidden weapon of the old ancestor of the Dark Race, and Yuanshan. Due to some reasons, it was rewarded to Sovereign Yuan Dan. Ancient Demon Dragon Bone. This bone claimed to be one of the broken bones of the ancestral dragon Zhu Li. It has lost its spiritual nature and is useless. Blue Luan Blood Essence. This blood essence claims to be the blood of an ancient great demon Blue Luan. It has lost its spiritual nature. Immemorial Pill Devil Pill God Fragment. Ning Fan could recognize this item even without using all things communication. This item was given to Sovereign Yuan Dan by Sun Luo in the past. Ancient Devil Tentacle. It seems to be the tentacle left behind by an ancient great devil called Chong Hun. It looks a little dirty and has lost its spiritual nature. Ethereal Immortality Pill, a type of 9 transformations golden pill. It can make a cultivator feel like an immortal for a short period and forget all their troubles. With the convenience of all things communication, Ning Fan could to chat with non-living things and obtain a large amount of information. With all things communication, Ning Fan could to talk to and to obtain a lot of information. These 2 items were treasures of the Summit of Devil Conferral. The Arch Yuan Dan seemed to have a close relationship with the Summit of Devil Conferral. As of these items were from of to and were for not to of fan. As to for of to 4. Of Ning. 2 of to 4 to. As for those items, it was an eye-opener for Ning Fan. At the same time, it also made him speechless. It seemed like Sovereign Yuan God only looked at the background of the item. As long as it had a background, he would collect it regardless of whether it was useful or not. He seemed to be a collector. Unfortunately, from today onwards, all of these items belonged to Ning Fan. Of course, not all of Sovereign Yuan God's items were rubbish. There were also some good items. 2 traces of Genesis Chi. Sovereign Yuan God had spent countless years to collect them. He had been reluctant to use them all this time. Now, Ning Fan was the one who benefited from them. Ning Fan thought to himself. Now, he no longer needed to use Genesis Chi as a trump card. He could directly devour it to improve his cultivation base. Consuming limitless pills was just a common cultivation method of the ancient cultivators. Genesis Chi was one of the few treasures that could greatly improve a cultivator's cultivation base. There were 100 heaven and earth peach branches, 33 heaven and earth peach blossoms, 8 heaven and earth peach fruits, and 1 heaven and earth peach tree. Be it peach branches, peach blossoms, or peach fruits, they were all products produced during the growth of the heavenly peach tree. Consuming and refining them could greatly enhance a cultivator's medicine soul, and they could also be used to refine wood attribute magical treasures. The peach tree of heaven and earth was the most precious item. It was a divine tree that was as famous as the wondrous tree of 7 treasures. After many years of refinement by Emperor Yuan Dan, although it was not a magical treasure, it already possessed the power of a lower-grade connate magical treasure. Just like the wondrous tree of 7 treasures, this tree had great potential. As long as it was nurtured properly, it could even serve as a protective treasure for a sage. Without any hesitation, Ning Fan directly planted the heaven and earth peach tree in the 100 Herbs Garden of the Divine Farmer, making it live next to the tree of 7 wonders. Cursed Gourd. This item was the treasure that Sovereign Yuan Dan used to lure Ning Fan. After capturing Sovereign Yuan Dan, this treasure naturally belonged to Ning Fan. I wonder if this treasure is the Qi and Blood Gourd. Ning Fan activated the divine blood in his body to sense the gourd. A few breaths later, he revealed a disappointed look. Unfortunately, this treasure wasn't the blood and Qi gourd. This was an expected result. How could the blood and Qi gourd be so easy to find? Because Ning Fan was already mentally prepared, He only sighed for a moment even though he was disappointed. Then he regained his composure. Even though this treasure wasn't the chi and blood gourd, it was also a low-grade innate magic treasure that was hard to come by. It possessed a rather strong curse power. If someone who was proficient in curse techniques were to equip this gourd, the power of their curse techniques would be doubled. Suddenly, Old Wu's ugly face appeared in Ning Fan's mind. The curse effect of Old Wu's bad luck was already very strong. If I give this treasure to Old Wu, it will double the power of his curse. This item is indeed useful. However, it is not suitable to be used as a material for incineration. After sorting out his spoils of war, Ning Fan looked at the boundless river and felt a little worried. His battle arc had been destroyed by the experts of the foreign races. The magnetic force of the realm river was very strong. Even an immortal emperor's spirit sense could not spread too far in this place. Without a battle arc as a means of transportation, even an immortal emperor who was as strong as him would find it difficult to move an inch in the realm river. Fortunately, my Tao of divination has improved slightly. Now, I can use the treasure-searching compass to locate the location of the realm river. With the treasure-searching compass, even if I lose my battle arc, I can still walk on the realm river with some difficulty. Those experts of the foreign races have been repelled by me. In a short period of time, they probably won't come back and court their own deaths. Most likely, they will first think of a way to restrain my world's submerged water bottle. After they are safe, they will come for revenge. For the time being, I don't have to worry about those immortal emperors of the foreign races chasing after me. However, if they come again in the future, they will certainly have something to rely on. I'm afraid it will be very difficult for me to defeat them with the world's submerged water bottle again. While Ning Fan was pondering, his expression suddenly changed. All of a sudden, a sinister laughter of a woman resounded from the depths of his sea of consciousness. It was extremely strange. "Little thief, you've been too careless. You didn't even notice that your sea of consciousness has been invaded by me. Ha! The successor of ancient chaos who has shaken the entire eastern heaven is just SOSO. Ning Fan scanned his sea of consciousness and his eyes immediately turned grim. At this moment, there was actually a black-robed lady who was about the same size as a speck of dust in his heavenly spiritual sea. When did this lady invade his sea of consciousness? He actually did not sense anything at all. This was really unimaginable. One should know that his perception was not much weaker than a quasi-saint realm expert's. Since this lady could invade his sea of consciousness, she could also invade the sea of consciousness of a slightly weaker quasi-saint realm expert. What a powerful lady! He had never heard of her before. Who are you? Why did you invade my sea of consciousness? Even though he was shocked, he did not panic. Even though this lady's stealth ability was very strong, her cultivation base seemed to be very low. After all, she was just a speck of dust. How strong could she be? If an ordinary immortal emperor's sea of consciousness was invaded by this lady, they would probably be flustered. After all, even a powerful immortal emperor's sea of consciousness was a fragile place. However, Ning Fan was different. His divine spirit sea had already been forged into an iron bucket. Even if it directly withstands the attack of a 12th Nirvana magic treasure, his sea of consciousness would not necessarily be injured. Even if a speck of dust gets blown into his sea of consciousness, so what? It could not hurt his sea of consciousness at all. You're asking me who I am? Listen carefully. My name is Inji. I'm the one and only dust immortal in this world. Because I have an agreement with the Primordial Pill Emperor, I'm willing to be his disciple and obey his orders. You're too hateful. How dare you plot against the Primordial Pill Emperor and capture him? If you know what's good for you, quickly let go of the Primordial Pill Emperor and I will spare your life. Otherwise, this young lady will definitely destroy your sea of consciousness and cause your sea of consciousness to collapse and die. The woman threatened. This lady is the Primordial Pill Emperor's subordinate? Ning Fan was slightly surprised. He did not expect the Primordial Pill Emperor to have a pretty good seedling among his subordinates despite his weak strength. She actually managed to invade his sea of consciousness without him noticing. He was afraid that he would not be able to find a second person like her in the Dharma ending era. Even a quasi-saint realm expert or an ancient great cultivator would not be able to do this. After all, the Tao of perception had always been Ning Fan's strong point. If he keeps his guard up, even a quasi-saint realm expert would not be able to get close to him. You're threatening me. Do you know that I hate being threatened the most? Ning Fan said indifferently. Even though this lady's abilities were strange, he would not show any mercy if she is his enemy. Humph. Cut the crap. Just tell me if you're going to let go of the primordial pill emperor or not. If you don't let him go, I will really take action. Seeing that Ning Fan remained unmoved, the lady said angrily. If you want to take action, you can try. Humph. You're the one who forced me to do this. I don't want to kill in the first place. However, since you insist on seeking death, I will send you on your way. Immemorial Yin Sense Thorn. The lady condensed all of her Yin Qi into a thin needle and pierced it into Ning Fan's sea of consciousness. Her cultivation base was not high, but this stab was quite impressive. Unless the opponent was an immortal emperor who had refined his or her sea of consciousness, even an immortal emperor who was as strong as him would be injured by her stab. Unfortunately, this stab could not pierce through Ning Fan's sea of consciousness at all. It's impossible. You're just an ancient immortal venerate. How can your sea of consciousness be so strong? The lady's expression changed drastically. Not to mention ancient immortal venerates, even among the immortal emperors, how many of them could have a sea of consciousness that was as strong as Ning Fan's? This man is simply a monster. You've already done it. Now, it's my turn. Ning Fan activated his chaotic world purple light and scanned through his sea of consciousness. He easily knocked out the lady and dragged her out of his sea of consciousness, capturing her. Looking at the lady in black robes who was as small as a speck of dust in his palm, Ning Fan could not help but sigh at the wonders of creation. It was all thanks to his incredible eyesight. Ordinary cultivators might not be able to see an existence of this size clearly, but he could see it with incomparable clarity. It was an extremely beautiful lady, even though she was only the size of a speck of dust. Her body size was extremely small. However, it was not because she had shrunk her body size using a divine ability. Instead, she was born this way. If Ning Fan's heavenly being eyesight was not mistaken, this lady attained her Tao through dust. The type of dust was the pill ashes left behind after a failed pill refinement. This lady was able to sneak into Ning Fan's sea of consciousness without anyone noticing. In terms of stealth ability, she was probably the #1 in the entire Eastern Heaven. Of course, it was just that her strength was a little low. Even if she managed to sneak into Ning Fan's sea of consciousness, she could not hurt him at all. However, if this lady intrudes into the sea of consciousness of other immortal emperors, even if it is far from enough to kill an immortal emperor, it would still be able to injure his sea of consciousness. If this lady is used properly, she would be no different from a great killing weapon. Even a quasi-saint realm expert would fall into her trap if they are careless. Ning Fan activated his divine ability and woke the lady up. Then he said indifferently, "The treasures of that old man Yuan Dan are all mine now. You naturally belong to me as well. Inji, right? From today onwards, you are my servant. Of course, I never force others to do things against their will. If you insist on not surrendering, I will still send you to your death because I respect your loyalty." The black-robed lady fell into an unprecedented struggle. She had a promise with Emperor Yuan Dan that she would serve him for the rest of her life in exchange for him to do something for her. However, after so many years, Emperor Yuan Dan seemed to have never taken her request to heart. It made her extremely disappointed. Even so, he never took the initiative to break his promise. She was a person who kept her promises. However, now that a great disaster was about to befall her, she could not help but resent Emperor Yuan Dan a little. If Emperor Yuan Dan fulfilled his promise and helped her improve her cultivation base, she would definitely be able to pierce through Ning Fan's sea of consciousness and kill him. She would not have to be captured by Ning Fan and wait for her death miserably. To surrender or not to surrender? Who doesn't care about their own lives? If it is for someone who is worth it, she is also willing to die for him. However, is Emperor Yuan Dan really worthy of her death? Senior Yuan Dan promised me one thing, but he did not fulfill his promise. If you promise me one thing, I am willing to surrender to you. What is it? Ning Fan really wanted to subdue this strange lady. Thus, he was not angry at her request. Why you? The lady seemed to be a little embarrassed to speak her mind. She gritted her teeth and endured the redness in her face to speak her mind. I want you to help me find someone. Find someone? Who do you want to find? I don't know who he is. I don't know what he looks like. I don't even know if he's a man or a woman. However, I remember the taste of his tears. It's unique. It's very bitter. It's 10,000 times more bitter than Jianan's sea of bitterness. He had once transformed me with a drop of his tears and cultivated a spiritual sense from a grain of incense ash. I must repay him. To repay him? That's why she's looking for someone? Ning Fan smiled faintly. He quite liked this lady's temperament. Then he felt a headache coming. This lady kept saying that she wanted to find someone. Unfortunately, she could not even tell whether the person she was looking for was a man or a woman, a human or a demon. She had never seen the person she wanted to find. He could only remember the taste of that person's teardrop. That person's teardrop transformed it into a human form. How am I going to find him with this little information? Ning Fan sighed softly. Even though he really wanted to subdue this lady, he really could not find the person she was looking for. I'm sorry. The information you've given me is too little. I'm afraid I won't be able to find the person you're looking for just based on the taste of his tears. Does that so? You really can't find him? Even though you're much stronger than Senior Primal Core Realm, you don't have the confidence to find him. Senior Primal Core Realm, on the other hand, insisted that he could find him for me. He was just lying to me. He wanted me to work for him for free. The lady was very disappointed. She had almost forgotten how many years she had been searching for that person. It was really a long journey. She really wanted to find the person who had enlightened her and thank him properly. Whereas the person whose tears were even more bitter than Jianan's sea of bitterness now. Or perhaps he had already disappeared in the endless passage of time. You should think about it again. Do you want to change your request? Submit to me. I'll give you time to think about it. As soon as he finished speaking, Ning Fan casually placed the lady into his sea of consciousness. He planned to keep her in his vast sea of consciousness like how he would rear a fish. You actually trust me so much that you're willing to let me stay in your sea of consciousness? The lady was extremely touched. When she was working hard for the Primal Core Realm, he was never willing to let her enter his sea of consciousness. However, her cultivation required her to stay in someone else's sea of consciousness. Ning Fan smiled and did not answer her. This was trust. However, what Ning Fan trusted was not the lady but his own strength. He was confident that even if he let her stay in his sea of consciousness, she would not be able to harm his sea of consciousness at all, let alone prying into his memories. Of course, Ning Fan would not explain this to the lady. He was happy to let the lady misunderstand his trust and gradually develop a sense of loyalty towards him. If he could really make this lady submit to him wholeheartedly and subdue her, he could also use her to slightly harm the sea of consciousness of a quasi-saint realm expert in the future. If he could do this at a crucial moment, it would definitely be very useful. After dealing with Inji, Ning Fan did not stay in this place for long. Instead, he activated the treasure-searching compass and determined the direction of heaven and earth. Then, he flew towards the Ling Yun Pass, ignoring the obstruction of the magnetic force. How could the speed of the battle arc be compared to Ning Fan's own speed? The journey that took several hours to go to the Ling Yun Pass took him less than the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Seeing that Ning Fan could actually move freely in the border river without using the battle arc, all the cultivators who were guarding the pass were shocked. Of course, what was even more shocking was that Sovereign Primordial Pill, who went on a treasure hunt with Ning Fan, was actually killed by Ning Fan. In this life, Ning Fan did not plan to hide this matter. How could others not ask about the disappearance of an immortal emperor? Thus, it was better for him to explain it to them first to avoid any misunderstandings. Ning Fan announced the whole story of how he captured Sovereign Primordial Pill and reported it to Taiyuan Ferry. In order to prove that he was forced to kill Sovereign Primordial Pill because he had no other choice, Ning Fan even made a large number of jade slips to record what happened and sent all of them back to Taiyuan Ferry. With conclusive evidence, everyone knew that Ning Fan had killed Sovereign Primordial Pill out of self-defense. Naturally, no one would blame Ning Fan for this. Others would only be angry at Sovereign Primordial Pill for betraying the alliance, colluding with the foreign races and betraying the Eastern Heaven. In front of a great enemy, who would be willing to have a traitor on their side. All of Sovereign Primordial Pill's disciples were captured. According to investigations, these people were also involved in the betrayal of the Primordial Pill realm. This matter was intolerable to Emperor Tsong and the others. Under the rage of the crowd, these people were all executed by the furious cultivators of the Eastern Heaven. When the news of Ning Fan capturing another 2 immortal emperors of the foreign races gradually spread, the entire border river was in an uproar. Ning Fan's reputation became even greater. This was also because Ning Fan did not reveal that one of the 2 immortal emperors of the foreign races was a 9 tribulation immortal emperor. If the people of the world knew that Ning Fan had even captured a 9 tribulation immortal emperor, they would probably start to doubt their own lives. As the saying goes, going too far is as bad as falling short. Ning Fan did not want to cause too much of a commotion. Moreover, he did not capture Afro in a fair battle. He had relied on trickery. There was nothing to boast about. After dealing with the trivial matters, Ning Fan informed all the cultivators in Lingyun Pass that he was going into seclusion. If there was nothing important, they were not to disturb him. On the first day of his seclusion, Ning Fan interrogated Sovereign Primordial Pill and even searched his soul and memories. No one knew what Ning Fan knew after prying open Sovereign Primordial Pill's mouth. On the second day of his seclusion, Yin Ji, the lady covered in dust, gave him an answer. She was willing to serve Ning Fan. However, her condition was changed. She could call Ning Fan her master, but she was not willing to be enslaved by Ning Fan. Ning Fan also did not have the ability to plant an enslavement seal on a lady who was as small as a speck of dust. The restrictions on enslavement seals were too complicated. Planting an enslavement seal on Inji was no different from drawing a 10,000 li landscape on a speck of dust. When it reached such a microscopic level, even Ning Fan could not control his magic power to lay down such a meticulous restriction. Fortunately, Ning Fan's mind-reading technique allowed him to observe people's minds. He knew that Inji was a lady who kept her word. Since she had promised to serve him, she would not go back on her words. Even if she does, Ning Fan was confident that he could subdue her. There was nothing to worry about. When this lady truly serves Ning Fan, it meant that she no longer had any relationship with her former master, Sovereign Primordial Pill. Therefore, when Ning Fan decided to kill Sovereign Primordial Pill, she did not plead for him even though she felt a little reluctant. She believed in Buddhism, and Buddhism was particular about the cycle of karma. Sovereign Primordial Pill only had himself to blame. She naturally understood that. Sovereign Primordial Pill's true form was not the limitless pill or any other pills that could increase one's cultivation base. This made Ning Fan rather disappointed. Sovereign Primordial Pill's true form was a type of pill called Immortal Sense Pill. After searching through Sovereign Primordial Pill's memories, Ning Fan found out that Sovereign Primordial Pill was originally the Immortal Sense Pill concocted by Medicine Saint Nan when he was still alive. Many years after Medicine Saint Nan's death, the Immortal Sense Pill mutated and turned into a pill devil. That was how Sovereign Primordial Pill came to be. The Immortal Sense Pill was just a 9-revolution golden pill. However, as Sovereign Primordial Pill continued to improve, the grade of this pill was no longer comparable to the past. It had already advanced to the 9 Revolutions Emperor Pill, and it was even a pill that was half a step away from the 10 Revolutions Ancestral Pill. Even Ning Fan was moved by the strength of the medicinal power. After Ning Fan destroyed Sovereign Primordial Pill's spirit sense, he refined it again and finally assimilated it into his body. As the medicinal power spread throughout his body, Ning Fan's spirit sense cultivation base began to skyrocket. After that, he once again obtained the opportunity to break through to the eternal four-thought realm. There were 4 great realms in the spirit sense cultivation base of ancient cultivators. Each realm was more profound than the previous. The lowest threshold was called waterfall thought. When Ning Fan attempted to break through to the waterfall realm again, he could not help but think of Tu Huang. He remembered the time when he shared the ancient Buddha Dao fruit with Tu Huang and the scenes when he attempted to break through to the waterfall realm. What a pity! Sure enough, it's still too early for you to achieve waterfall thought. Don't be discouraged. There will still be chances in the future. You can break through slowly. Even with my innate talent, I failed more than 100 times to break through to the waterfall thought realm in the past. If you succeed in one go, I won't have the face to live anymore. Tu Huang's words were still ringing in Ning Fan's ears. He calmed himself down and cleared away all distracting thoughts, focusing on breaking through. It was very dangerous to be absent-minded at such a crucial moment. Ning Fan did not dare to be careless. In the past, when he attempted to break through to the waterfall realm for the first time, he failed. Today was his second attempt. This time, Ning Fan had absolute confidence that he would succeed because he had directly swallowed a large immortal sense pill of a 7-tribulation immortal emperor realm cultivator. I will succeed. This time, I will definitely succeed. Green Spirit, just watch. This time I will succeed. Yin Ji, who was in Ning Fan's Sea of Consciousness, witnessed the whole process of Ning Fan's Sea of Consciousness shattering and reforming with her own eyes. She saw that the threads of Ning Fan's spirit sense kept growing stronger and stronger, gradually turning into a waterfall. She also saw that the cultivation base of Ning Fan's spirit sense suddenly skyrocketed. In just half a day, his spirit sense had actually become more than 10 times stronger than before. Roar! Ning Fan let out a long roar. A vast spirit sense pressure spread from the place where he was in seclusion, spreading across the entire Lingyun Pass. That level of spirit sense pressure was no longer something that an immortal venerable could possess. It was already much stronger than most of the immortal kings. The enormous medicinal power of the immortal sense pill allowed Ning Fan to break through to the waterfall realm. His spirit sense strength skyrocketed by 10 times. However, this was not the end. Only less than half of the medicinal power of the immortal sense pill was used. The remaining medicinal power continued to increase the cultivation base of Ning Fan's spirit sense, causing it to gradually stabilize. Then, it began to advance towards the next realm of the Four Thoughts realm. The first level of the Eternal Four Thoughts realm was Waterfall Thought, and the second level was Stream Thought. Ning Fan's spirit sense became stronger and stronger. Gradually, it began to exceed the level of an immortal king and reached the level of an ordinary 6-tribulation immortal emperor. He began to rely on the strength of his spirit sense to break through to the stream realm. However, he failed this time. 1 failure, 2 failures. After failing a few times, Ning Fan gave up on this matter. He knew that his current spirit sense cultivation base was still lacking. Unless he had 1 or 2 large-sized immortal sense pills, he would never be able to break through to the stream realm. What a pity! I'm afraid I won't be able to find another immortal sense pill as delicious as Sovereign Yuan's, Ning Fan said regretfully. Feeling his spirit sense, which was more than 20 times stronger than before, Ning Fan smiled in satisfaction. In the past, when his spirit sense was still weak, he could rely on the rain technique to sense things that were not much weaker than a quasi-sage. Now that his spirit sense had improved tremendously, his senses were naturally much sharper than some first-level quasi-sages. Although his cultivation base did not increase due to the great increase in his spirit sense, his combat power, magic power consumption, the details of his abilities and many other aspects had improved tremendously. After devouring Sovereign Yuan's main body, Ning Fan continued to refine the 2 traces of Sovereign Yuan's origin qi. Ning Fan's divine spirit body was extremely strong. It was not too difficult for him to refine the origin qi directly. Moreover, his refining speed was incomparably shocking. After consuming the 2 traces of origin qi, Ning Fan's ancient god realm cultivation base increased by hundreds of tribulations magic power, reaching the threshold of the 1,000 tribulations realm. Moreover, it triggered the first cultivation tribulation since he broke through to the eternal immortal venerate realm. If he succeeds in overcoming the tribulation, he would become a single tribulation ancient god realm cultivator. Perhaps it was because Ning Fan had cultivated the divine spirit Tao. The power of his cultivation tribulation was actually much more terrifying than the 5 tribulations of others, even though it was just a single tribulation cultivation tribulation. When red clouds appeared in the sky above the Ling Yun Pass and thick red lightning bolts that were strong enough to injure a 5 tribulation immortal king fell from the sky, the entire pass was shocked. The direction of the heavenly tribulation had locked onto Ning Fan's place of seclusion. Without a doubt, Ning Fan had achieved a breakthrough in his cultivation base. Everyone knew that Ning Fan's rise in the eastern heaven was extremely fast. From a first-step cultivator to a newly advanced immortal venerate realm, it did not take him long at all. How long had it been? Ning Fan was actually going to become a first tribulation immortal venerate again. How could it not be shocking? Such a cultivation speed was just too frightening. Those newly advanced immortal venerates who could not even touch the bottleneck of a first tribulation cultivation tribulation after spending millions of years should really find a block of tofu and kill themselves. What was even more frightening was the power of the heavenly tribulation. Was this a single tribulation cultivation tribulation? How could its power be so terrifying? Hundreds and thousands of attacks of the heavenly tribulation descended, and each of them could injure a 5 tribulation immortal king. It was not an exaggeration to say that it could destroy heaven and earth. The power of the heavenly tribulation was enough to kill all immortal venerates in the ancient times. However, to Ning Fan, it was just an attack that tickled him. Ning Fan directly activated his eternal true body and soared into the sky, shattering the tribulation clouds that covered the sky. In less than 10 breaths' time, he had already passed the single tribulation cultivation tribulation. At this moment, the breakthrough had ended. Ancient devil cultivation realm, newly advanced immortal venerate realm. Ancient demon cultivation realm, newly advanced immortal venerate realm. Jie Shui cultivation realm, 3 stars true blood realm. Ancient god realm. The first eternal tribulation. At the bottom of this realm river, there are countless 800 million yin heavy wood which can be used to concoct a large number of immeasurable pills. If I can get my hands on these yin heavy wood, I can become even stronger. If the foreign races are really able to restrain my water drowning vase, with my current cultivation base, I definitely won't have any chance of winning if I'm surrounded by a dozen or so immortal emperors. Ning Fan's gaze shifted to the vast water area and made up his mind. Now that his spirit sense had improved tremendously, even though the magnetic force of the realm river still interfered with his spirit sense, it was not as serious as before. Perhaps, it was time for him to take the risk and go to the bottom of this river. After all, it would still be dangerous to hide on the surface of the water. So, he might as well do the opposite. Of course, if he really wants to go to the bottom of the river, he would still need to disguise himself. Ning Fan was certainly not foolish enough to go into the underwater world with the identity of a cultivator from the eastern heaven. I have some matters to attend to outside. All of you stay in the pass. If the immortal emperors of the foreign races come to attack, inform me immediately. I will come back as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.